dozen successful fieldings in the state tax arena. And again, going back to adaptable, we're going to be we've already coordinated and are coordinating with OIMT in terms of their future infrastructure upgrades, and so we'll be able to capitalize and move in concert with them to hire, for instance, for higher versions of Windows and et cetera. A big point of ours too, again with the IRS tax breaches that you hear about, is enhanced security. We begin with the enhanced security to both protect both the tax system and the taxpayer privacy, and that's becoming a huge issue of late. Through the new hardware system and scanning solutions that our director already mentioned, we'll be able to greatly reduce lag time from payment and get money into the revenue stream quicker, as well as improve the refund times. I guess that has been a point of contention this last year. We're going to have some really vastly improved data analytics to help fraud detection and, again, to identify audit candidates. We're going to be, as public servants, we're going to be able to be more responsible and make better use and more effective use of our taxpayer dollars. And again, in addition, again, to our directors mentioned before about being responsive and adaptable to legislation like tax credits, rate changes, and deductions. And again, another great component of that is, again, to provide research-related components like revenue impacts of tax credits and so forth. So we're very excited about that. Again, a big key component mentioned before in being responsive to our taxpayers is, in addition to facilitating a free state e-file at no cost to the taxpayer, one of my favorite key components is the new interactive voice system that our director had mentioned. Again, increasing customer response rates, and to allow either for them to wait in a queue for help or to leave a message. And again, that's a system that is badly outdated and we're holding together barely. The bottom line is that this tax system modernization is going to automate many of our processes, which is going to, in fact, reduce the error rate and increase our response rate, and again, help research, automate assessments, and it's going to encourage and increase voluntary compliance for our taxes. And that concludes my portion of the briefing.
The next thing we wanted to just go very quickly through was the TSM operating expenses, just so you can see what the spend has been thus far. And that also was provided to you. Now, this is just on the general fund piece, not on CIP, because obviously we haven't had any CIP at this point until we've had Fast Enterprises on board. So just as an FYI, and I believe this may have been shown to you in the past, but fiscal year 14, the spend was $738,504. We had a lot of legal services, and there was consulting, and bottom line 700, and then of course payroll. You know, just those are that's actually not under TSM. That's just under DOE tax. But those are the folks that we have that we've basically drafted over for TSM, and of course, you know, that were those positions were earmarked for TSM as well. For fiscal year 2015, we have some training in there. The total bottom line for 15. Was $660,255. I should mention that we have absolutely no consultants on staff. We were able to, thanks to our a very efficient outside deputy AG, as well as our vendor themselves. Our legal services were only $12,000 to get the contract done, and ultimately. We've had just some training, that sort of thing. So very minimal. We don't have any sort of, as I say, consultants on board. What I should mention, just so you know for the future, what to expect for the future, is my understanding is that I believe the legislature has provided for TSM about $3 million a year in operating costs, in general funds monies. Last year, last fiscal year, I believe I'm told about 80%, I don't have the exact number, I should have brought it, but I don't, is about 80% of that money, because you can see we only spent $660, was given back. Basically, you know, I believe the chairs were asking us, what are you not going to spend? We gave them that number, so the money went back. We didn't need it. The $3 million, we will be coming back. We're right now working on an RFP for what we call an independent validation and verification person or firm or whatever you want to call it. Now, and what they call it IV&V. I had never heard it before, but it's independent validation and verification. And basically, this is someone who just basically independently verifies, yes, this milestone was attained, yes, this and that. Now, you know, my understanding from actually our IT person and project program manager, I should say, Robert Sue, is that, you know, an IV&V can be as massive or as as lean and mean as you want it. We're going to go with the lean and mean. We don't want to have somebody living in the office. We're just going to have somebody basically come in periodically, maybe quarterly, and Robert can speak more about this, to just basically independently say, yes, this was done, this is completed. But you just want that independence, but we don't want to burn a lot of money on this. So that $3 million, and we'll have a better sense very shortly as we go through the RFP process and we get some bids or whatever on a limited kind of IV&V, but we'll have an idea. But we believe the $3 million will more than cover it, and we're virtually certain more monies will be given back annually on the general fund side of things, relative to this project. We'll probably have training and that sort of thing, but that would be it. For anything future also, we're looking at resources, and right now we're just outlining, assigning, who's going to help, who's going to be a subject matter expert as we work forward on this implementation. So we have, Robert has a team of about 12 people on TSM. Because it'd probably be by way of reference, several years ago, and I don't remember the exact year, Robert probably would know it, is I believe the ledge designated 18 positions towards TSM, okay? He has a team right now that's operating with 12. The other folks are in compliance or in IT or in different areas, and either they or a designee in their area will actually be the ones to be working as an SME on the TSM project. So even though they're not part of his core team, the people that meet every day with the vendor on TSM, they're people we're going to be pulling in very, very shortly, and we'll have a rollout of that. Yeah. I think that's all I wanted to cover on the expenses. I would like to have Robert just go over the TSM program as far as a little more specifics on the rollout, short-term strategy and long-term strategy. Robert?
Good morning, Chair Tokuda and Chair Luke, Senators and Representatives. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to present the updated status of TSM. I really appreciate all your support to make this happen, especially the new administrations, and so supportive. So we have our Director, Zielinski, really supportive and get on board so we can be able to move forward. And I would like to just briefly introduce the procurement process we have been through, just very quickly, a few sentences. Director has mentioned a lot about how we procure, but one thing I want to make it up is we actually started on 2011. We went through RFI, and there are 23 vendor response, and there are 16 vendor on site to do demo. Through RFI, we also go through RFP process. So we try to actually do due diligence because the past value, back to 2010, we actually received the state auditor report and give a strong recommendation how we run the IT project in the futures. So fully comply with the recommendations, and we visit and also interface networking with other state government agencies, including IRS. And we fully study and prepare for this. And one of the major difference with the past tradition, the IT projects, we run by ad hoc, but this time we're well planned. We actually build a PMO, Program Management Office. In the office, we bring in technology experts, project management experts, business analyst experts, and also a quality assurance. As a matter of one of the newest staff we brought in is the foremost state IT auditors. So we'll do our quality assurance to assure our performance can meet our scope. So actually, we have a logo. Since we're here, just talking about just now, a chit chat with a friend here. Let's see here. Let's use this one. Our logo for TSM, we actually with a triangle here showing with a state flower in the centers, and it means we're going to meet our scope. We'll meet our timeline within a budget, and within meet our scope requirement. So we're fully trying to comply and make sure that we will have a proper project management methodology, not just run by IT. And another difference is, I want to clarify this one. The TSM is not purely a software replacement. it actually is a big programs. The TSM program including replacement of current outdated tax systems. We also build a data warehouse so we can do a data analytics, so we can be able to try to prevent the fraudulent tax. We actually also provide, also another function is for the e-filing and customer support. So we will be able through our web portal and provide interactive online service for taxpayers and businesses. So that is a big difference with traditional IT project runs. On top of that, we also including a business process engineering. So we have including the organization, business process change management. The integration of IT and business process engineering will assure the success of the TSM. And I think this is the one that we really appreciate our new director's support, because the department-wise need to support this, not just IT people doing the project. So I think this is the one we commit. We want to meet our scope within the timeline, within our budget. And we'll provide bi-weekly report to our steering committee. And after that, we'll present the decision from steering committee to executive steering committee. And before we sign out any payment, and the users will be the first tier to approve the successor project. So the whole checking point is very, very rigid. We'll make sure we spend taxpayers' money wise, so we don't waste taxpayers' money. And in the past, probably few decades, all the IT projects always very kind of depressing news. We want to make this one to be a successful project and to show our appreciation for all your support. And I commit myself. I told Maria, I've been working private sector 15 years and government 15 years. I'm supposed to retire already, but I'm committing myself. I want to make sure this project be a first successful IT project for the state of Hawaii. And I just also want to make up one thing about the TSM. Another difference is, in the past, not only the system keep crashing, but also we have a number one problem is whenever there's tax law changes, we are struggling. There's no way we can make it happen in a short period of time. So this time, we want to make sure that it's under our project scope. Whenever a critical tax law changes, we'll be able to do it quickly through the rule engine. So we don't have to do hardcore changes, and this is very different with the traditional tax system. And I believe with our research and our counterpart, other state government, their experience, Gentech was able to provide the service to 22 states. And I think the competence of our vendors and the competence of my team, the TSM, PMO, and the support from our administration and legislatures, I think it's time for us to prove, we not talk, not just talk, we try to use our action to prove our success. So from now on, we'll try to do more and talk less. And whenever it's success, we will report to you, at least by quarterly. Every quarterly, we're going to send you a report, see what's going on the status. We want to keep it as transparent as possible. And that's my commitment. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Lastly, we'd like to have James Harrison, who's one of the principals at Fast Enterprises, come over and make some comments.
Good morning, Chair Takuda. Morning. Chair Luke, senators, representatives. Aloha. Aloha. It's on behalf of FAST, and I am one of the 6 founding partners at FAST, so on behalf of them and everyone at FAST, it's very exciting. I guess I could say it's both exciting and a little anxious. We're obviously very pleased to be selected, but we also are very aware of the serious responsibility that we've undertaken. These are not easy projects, to say the least, and we're going to be very busy the next 4 years. I'm confident. We've done this many times in many states, so from our perspective, we're not doing anything new, but our ability to succeed is definitely dependent on the partnership that we have with the agency. And from that perspective, we're very excited because we see a lot of commitment from Director Zielinski and her staff, And so we know that that is going to pave the way and help us to be successful. There's a little extra reason I'm pretty excited about all this. I actually, my father worked at UH for many years, and I actually went to St. Louis for a couple of years. So for me, it's a little bit of a coming home. It's great to be here again. Our staff, the company is very excited about this opportunity. I was telling the director, it's a little different. Back in January, we got a new project to do vehicle registration for the state of North Dakota. And staffing that project and staffing this project are not the same thing. So it's we're bringing some good experience to the island, some people who have done this many times for many years. But our model is to supplement that with some people who come from the area, let's just say. So that's been working well for us too. We have some folks who maybe grew up here but went to the mainland for college, and we've hired them on, and they're very excited about the opportunity to come back and work here. We also have some folks just coming out of UH, and they're also very excited that they're going to get an opportunity to live and work in Hawaii. So I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm very happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. And I do want to say thank you again. Thank you.
We'll take questions from members. They're all mixed in.
So we don't have to go Senate House. I mean, someone can just first come, first serve.
Questions? Senator Sloan?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Zielinski. It's a very ambitious project. We certainly want you to succeed. The taxpayers have spent a lot of money to date with very few results. So I think that one of the questions that I would have would be, while everything seems to be laid out pretty well in terms of timelines and all that, what's the situation with employees and personnel of the Department of Taxation? Because that's been a concern over the years as well.
Okay. I'm not sure, you're referring to just kind of mindset, that sort of thing, or just the culture, or, I mean, that kind of thing? I'm not really quite sure.
Well, you've had a turnover.
Yes.
You've had problems with actually matching people, having the experience or the requirements to do this. So what steps are you taking to ensure that the staff will be able to make this transition?
Okay. Well, we've been working very you're absolutely right. There are a lot of folks that did leave that had a lot of institutional knowledge in the past several years, I suppose. So that's, of course, always a challenge. However, you know, we still have, thankfully, a lot of people that are still here in DOTAX with institutional knowledge, but we also have a lot of newer people, but that may not have that institutional knowledge, but they have the analytical ability that, quite frankly, people like myself don't have. You know, they grew up on computers. I was using an adding machine when I first started in accounting, and it was one of those real manual, old-fashioned ones. So, bottom line is, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, even though we don't have as much institutional knowledge as we did in the past, we still do have a core of people that are very willing to serve and are actually, I have to say, I mentioned it actually to the governor just the other day, and I said, and I'm not just saying this, I really truly mean this, is that, you know, I've kind of worked on different implementations, more from an accounting standpoint, and I have to say, I've never seen people so excited about this project. Most of the time, people are very nervous about it. Is it going to affect me? Am I going to lose my job? You know, I think it's just the nature of, as many said as both Deputy Director and Robert Sue said in the past, and currently we have such an antiquated and unstable system that people are just so excited about getting something that potentially will work and will have the flexibility to do what we want it to do. You know, it's very frustrating, and I know I'm getting off the subject, so I apologize, but it is frustrating. You know, I know to the staff themselves when they we say, yeah, we want to do that, but we can't do it. So I think, though, getting back to your question, though, is, yeah, we have lost some institutional, knowledge, but I do believe we have a core of people that are very much willing to serve, and we have some new blood, if you will, with some analytical skills and IT ability that we've never had before. And I have to say, I think the mindset and just the general feel in the department is improving. I truly do believe that. I think, is it perfect? No, of course not. But we're working on that. We truly are working on that, so that everybody feels like they're a partner in this. This is not something we want to jam down anybody's throat. We want them to feel that they have, they have a say in it, because they do. We can't do something based on just what, myself and Robert say, and Deputy Kim think is the right way to go. We have to ask people and solicit their opinion and their input. So I think they're excited about the fact that we're actually engaging them. If that helps, I hope.
Okay. One more question
Yeah.
at this time. Are there penalties or incentives in this contract?
No.
None at all. So there's no penalties if there's non-performance?
The penalty would be that we wouldn't get to that pay. We wouldn't pay. I mean, that's the contract specifies they have to be. So I guess if you want to call that a penalty, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, the bottom line is they have to achieve, a certain gate, to get to a certain gate before we actually make the payment. And that's part of the reason why we'll have an IV&V person there as well, or, a firm or whatever you will. So yeah, that is the penalty, if you will. There's no incentive to say, oh, we'll give you more money if you get this done before. No, definitely not that.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you, Ms. Zielinski.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair.
Representative Ward?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairs, for having this hearing. This is very transparent, and thank you for providing the contract. This is very helpful. I have a question to you and to the contractor, Mr. Harrison.
Yes.
If you could come forward.
Sure.
Obviously, the people of Hawaii are concerned with costs and benefits. We've got a $60 million commitment, $3 million a year. What are some of the metrics of the benefits? Because we're in the Finance Committee, usually you got so many millions of dollars that we haven't collected that's outstanding. We can't do it because we're antiquated. What can we expect in terms of benefits if you've got some benefits?
I'll have James talk a little bit more about it, but what I can say right off the bat, and I know this will sound like, we got all the solutions or whatever, but the bottom line is that a better system is going to have, or a better system, a modern system is going to have analytics that we simply don't have right now, and also data warehouse information. Right now, our collections, the way we handle collections is so antiquated simply because of the database that we have that we work with. So it's very difficult. So to kind of give you a quick answer, but not, and then I'll get into it more, is that it will improve collections. People, especially, past due, accounts that we're just not able to look at. It will process returns faster, which means that we will get the monies into the account and into the coffers a lot quicker.
Do you have an example of that? Right now, it was told to us it takes like 2 weeks to get a check from the time it's opened in the bank. Are those scanners that you're going to put in, like you're going to get immediate credit?
Once
the way that people can do it on their iPhones nowadays?
Yeah. Once the scanners are in place, and Gentex, it has to be attached, of course, to the new system. Once let's say we fast forward to full implementation, when that thing gets scanned and the check gets scanned, it's going to go, and James may probably be able to give you the better procedure, how that process works. But my understanding is that it will be scanned and ultimately interface with our bank, and the monies would get directly into the account at that point. And let me, James, if you can speak more to it.
I guess I would just say the director pretty much hit the nail on the head. It will take a little time, but once the system is fully implemented, I would say every other state we're working on, the day that checks arrive on the loading dock, they are able to get them through their processes, and by the end of the business day, essentially have those checks delivered to the bank. So we're doing that at every client we work at, and I would expect we will also be doing that here with Hawaii.
We were also told that we have $1 billion outstanding of people who haven't paid up. You got a sense of how much we might be able to collect of that given the new system? In other words, what are the quantitative, how much money are we going to get back by this investment of $60 million? That's basically it.
Yeah, I'll take the first part of it. Yeah, we do have an aging report, and we have there are many different pieces. I don't think the billion is the right number, but, you know, just is
It's
just
close to it.
well, when you look at things that are even current right now that are just being worked on, it would probably come to that number. But some of those things are not necessarily what you would view as, you know, like as an aging report, if you will, because it's something that they're still working on. The auditors are working on, and they're sending out the assessment, and we will get the payment. But bottom line is, though, the database and the data warehousing function and the analytics will be so much better that we believe we will be able to improve collection significantly. We truly believe. I mean, we've thrown out. You know, I don't feel. It's really. I don't feel good about just throwing out a number and saying we think we'll get another 100 or 200 million right off the bat, because that's, you know, that's without any. I can't support that. But the point is that between improving our collections process, because with a better database and being able to having the process, and I'll actually have James talk more about it because I'm not as familiar with it, but how when things will be more automatic as far as billings going out. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that as far as with collections, you know, assessments, that sort of thing?
Sure. There's two things. I'll first just go back to the first thing the director was talking about. One of the improvements that we'll bring is actually in reporting, and that is, I can't say for sure because we're still looking at the details in Hawaii, but pretty much every agency we work at, they do have difficulties just reporting on their receivables, and they are what we generally find is they're overstated. As an example, a lot of jurisdictions will issue estimated assessments on taxpayers that looks like they're not paying. In reality, they're really out of business. And that just because they issued that assessment, it's now on their books as a receivable, and it just tends to stay there forever. And that's an area we help address, is getting a better reporting of what the receivables are. On the collection side, though, yeah, there's definitely going to be improvements. I will say, if you look across all the states we've done, it can be modest. Sometimes it's a 10% improvement in collections, and it can be dramatic. Sometimes it's a 60, 70% improvement in collections.
Does the contract have targets? Does this contract have targets? Targets to reach certain improvements?
Rollouts, but I'm not sure
There will be certain levels of revenue or certain percentage increases.
Yeah, this contract does not have that. Some of our contracts do, and I can say that as a company we're open to that, but we do charge a premium for that, and we try to explain to the states that we're happy to take that premium and work on that basis. It's not really going to change our behavior. At the end of the day, we're always going to help an agency to maximize the revenues they collect. And what I can say is, you know, as far as the track record, every state we've worked with has been able to more than recoup the cost of the system. That part is pretty safe. It's not very difficult to say that will happen. What is more difficult is, you know, to say how much. Is it going to be recover and then a little bit more, or is it going to be recover and a lot more? That's actually very difficult to say. And some of it does come down to the overall direction from the political side in terms of some of this money that can be collected may be, you know, a few years old, and it takes a certain appetite to go back to your constituents and kind of pound on the door and say, yeah, I know it's a few years old, but we want that money. So the amount that comes in is somewhat related to the appetite for being a tough collector. And the tools are going to be there to make sure that we do better and that we more than pay for the system. But there will be some choices about just how aggressive we want to be and how far back we want to go with old debt. And so those are decisions we'll be making, obviously, with the state as we go.
And Representative, just if I may, as James was speaking, I just kind of jotted down. I mean, I think the thing that, you know, it's in general, besides the things that James said and I said earlier, you know, the bottom line is because we're dealing with such an unagile system right now, there were delays in everything. when I go and I have meetings with all the different areas and stuff, and they'll say, you know, we're working on this, but we have, you know, because this doesn't work or because of this, there's so many manual processes involved. So there's delays and things. The bottom line is if we having an agile system will really enable us to do better auditing. I mean, our auditors, you know, just going through the steps of identifying, and I think that was one thing that we mentioned in the benefits was identifying potential, you know, taxpayers for audit. I mean, you know, the bottom line is there's a lot of people that pass through the filters simply because we don't have the analytics to do it. So, you know, I think that will really assist as well. So it's not just collections, improving on collections, it's processing better. There are still delays, even though we're not at a peak period. I hate to say it, but we still have delays in a lot of the processing. And it's really, a lot of it, as I mentioned, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, all 3 scanners were down. So we can't process anything when they're all down. So that's really the problem. So these are the kinds of things that will really improve just efficiency in general. You know, so I do believe that there are a lot of different places where we will see additional incremental revenue to the state. I mean, absolutely. You know, you don't want to agree to something as expensive as this unless you know you're going to see more revenue. You know, and even fraud. I mean, the better analytics right now, what we're doing, and I know you've all heard this. You heard it during the refund delay area, time, is that a lot of the things, even though we have our own kind of homemade screening and filters and everything, we don't have anything. I mean, probably when the system was done, there wasn't much fraud going on. But now it's it's part of our lives, unfortunately. So the analytics will be much better. Yeah, at the end of the day, you still have to have a human being look at certain things. You can never get past that. But it will do a lot of the front end's work that right now we're doing the front end and the middle end and the back end of all of that to identify fraud. Reducing fraud and not paying fraudulent returns, refund returns, is going to save us money too. Just with our broken down system, this is an advertisement, we saved $21.5 million this year. So, and that's just doing it with an ad hoc group of people. We don't even have a fraud team, if you will, and with a system that really is not particularly, robust.
Okay, I have a follow-up, and then I think Chair Takuda and Rep. Onishi has some questions. One of the things that I wanted to find out is, everything has been kind of conceptual. So what I know is when the Finance Committee visited the Department of Taxation, we went to, you took us, not you, but the prior director took us through the process. So you receive the check, and it goes to the mailroom, and a bunch of people open the mail, and there's cartons and boxes full of checks that are not processed, sitting there for days and weeks, and you need people to open the mail. After you open the mail, it gets delivered to a scanner that's somewhere else, and then it goes through some scanning machine, but some of them you have to manually put in because you can't do it through the scanning machine, and after that it gets processed, so it takes a long time. So I still don't understand how this new tax system modernization is going to cut that out. And the question also is, why are you trying to just replace the hardware of a broken down system? Because what you need to do is, instead of saying we have 3 scanners that broke down, so give us more scanners, what you really need to focus on is, like one of the things you said, is facilitate e-filing so that there's no cost to taxpayers. One of the big problems that Rep. Ward and others recognize is when you do e-filing, there's a fee assessed, and DOE Tax has always insisted that it cannot get away from not charging the fee to its taxpayers, which is wrong, because I pay Board of Water Supply through their portal, and I don't pay any fee at all. So somehow Board of Water Supply has figured it out, but DOE Tax hasn't. So how is it that you are trying to go through an e-filing system and then at the same time replace aging scanners? What you need to do is not change the hardware, you got to change your mentality. Because what's the sense of just replacing things that are already there. You know, you just gotta get rid of the whole thing. And if that's the case, we're willing to wait. I mean, 3 years ago, the prior director told us that we had all the money that we needed and it will be up and running in 5 to 6 years. 3 years later, you're coming to us and saying, okay, we got the RFP out and we have the contract. Well, I mean, 2 years from now, you're already supposed to have been up and running, so you're already behind. But regardless of that, why aren't you just trying to see how it's going to be efficient from the beginning as opposed to just changing the current hardware?
Okay, what I need to explain,
So just kind of basically, because you're kind of still talking conceptual and a lot of analytical terms.
Okay.
I just want you to tell us, how is this new system going to change the current process? So when people send in the checks, which is wrong to begin with, right? Because if you're going to change it to an e-filing system, people shouldn't be turning in checks. So how are you going to help that process and eliminate that process, number one? And then from that, how do you eliminate the mailroom where it's sitting there for weeks and weeks while you guys open the mail and scan? So this whole thing about replacing the scanners doesn't even make sense, because if it's electronic through either credit card or e-checks, you shouldn't even have the scanners. You should only have scanners for that small group of folks that we recognize as well who don't have capacity to do that. If that's the case, then have people go to a satellite office, or you folks help them over the phone, or think of something. But I just don't understand how you are trying to replace the same system. So just tell me, walk through it. How are you going to get rid of the mail delay? How are you going to get rid of this scanner thing and then get to a point where you're going to... Because when you pay credit card, right, or anything, I mean, you just go on and then it gets charged the next day. So how can you get through that with this system? If you cannot, then you got to come back.
okay, let me, if I may. First of all, unfortunately, over 60% of the people choose to send paper in versus do e-filing. Now,
Because
I recognize...
there's a penalty.
No. The payment, you mean. The payment is not something that... Now, that arrangement is through a third party, and that payment is going to the third party, is not going to the state. Okay, so even if we eliminate that, we've seen that, we do have certain e-filing abilities, but I mean, as far as it seems like a lot of people still use paper.
Okay, but you don't know that.
No, we don't know that.
That's
Okay.
your problem.
Right.
So that is still the problem. You are not changing your thinking.
Right, no.
Because you have to believe. I mean, there are states. Don't you agree? Okay, give it to him. Don't you agree other states and other counties have done e-filing successfully? I mean, are there states where it's mostly paper?
So, well, there's a lot of states we don't work with where there's a lot of paper. I think conservatively, once our software is in, we're seeing, for example, businesses with GE or with withholding about 50% rates on filing and paying electronically. So we are going to make some pretty substantial improvements
other states
there.
and counties have successfully implemented an e-filing system, right?
That's right. And I think this system will deliver that.
And Maria, your GE filings, you're trying to go e-filing anyway, so you cannot say that GE filing, people will do e-filing, but the regular income and corporate and everybody else, they're incapable of doing e-filing.
Right.
So if you change your mentality and mindset and how you make it more user-friendly, because writing the checks and stuff, I mean, I have spoken to people saying they would rather do e-filing, but because there's a penalty, they would not want to pay the $10 or 3%
No,
or
I know.
$1 to do e-filing. So you'd rather turn in a check.
Right.
So if you do that, then it adds to your mail cost, it adds to your
Understood.
scanning cost, and
Yeah.
then labor cost. So I don't know why, before you even start this whole thing, why you didn't think about, okay, can we just do e-filing
Okay,
instead
the
of saying...
problem is the current system does not enable us to do e-filing.
But that's
we
the
have to
whole
go with a
thing.
third party. But let me just finish what I'm going to say. The hardware you talk about, the scanner and all of that, is not, we're replacing that, but that was going to be part of this whole system no matter what. We were just doing it up front because we have failing hardware. Okay, that was going to be part, but it might have been rollout 4 or something. It wouldn't have been rollout 1. The bottom line is our scanners, even if they were working, which they, are iffy right now, are so antiquated. We were told, I think we actually made some phone calls to see if what it would cost to upgrade it. Well, I think Deputy Director Kim called in and they said that's 6 versions behind. It's 1960s, wasn't it?
Okay,
1960s.
so
Bottom line is they don't scan and they have no e-filing ability.
So if that's the case,
we have to replace the hardware.
So that's fine.
That's the
so
first
you gotta get these scanners, and that's fine. But then before you even started on this process, why didn't you folks think about, okay, if we're gonna try to make it efficient and user friendly, and then get the checks to the banks and to the state coffers immediately. I mean, the first thing that people would think about is let's do a mandatory e-filing system and then roll that out. So your rollout, the rollout should be number 1, personal income tax e-filing, right? Number 2, rollout GET e-filing. And then number 3, corporate income tax and then e-filing. Everybody else can wait until that happens. But what you're telling me is no, because people are not going to do it, or no,
that's
because
not
our
what I'm saying.
system doesn't work. So I just don't think that.
It does not have, the current system does not have the ability to e-file. We have to go with a third party, which
Okay,
means there's a
so that's
cost.
fine.
So who pays the cost? Is it the taxpayer? That's what's happening out, or does the state do it? We chose to have, obviously, this precedes me, but obviously they chose to have the taxpayer do it. But we really don't want to, we're at the point where we don't want to rely on third-party vendors. We want to do it internally. We should be doing it internally.
If you're doing it internally, then why aren't you getting rid of the whole process?
That's what we're doing.
So are you doing e-filing?
We're
So you're
going
gonna
to, but
implement
the first step is getting is to get the gen tax in place. And I'll let James talk to that.
So e-filing and e-paying, and there's even some other self-service. Taxpayers will be able to update their address if they've moved. They'll be able to go online and do that themselves. Those are.
Is your intent? So at the end of the day, so what I hear Maria, director, saying is you are doing e-filing. So at the end of the day, you're going to get rid of the third-party vendor, and you're going to do it yourself, and you're going to do e-filing. So then why do you need the scanners? Because if everyone's going to e-file and it's going to be a small amount of people, then you e-file, you don't need to open the mail and then do a scanner.
The bottom line is the current scanners do not have the ability
So
to
you're
do.
just replacing the current scanners for now.
Well, we're doing them because we're afraid that they're going to break.
Okay, so you're not going to add new scanners.
No, these are just replacing the ones that are ready, that are 1960s technology. The other thing I need to mention to you is we met with First Hawaiian Bank and we said, can we use these scanners?
Okay,
and,
so-
well, let me just, please, if I may.
Yeah.
When they scan the check and the return, I wanted to get the check to be scanned that we could send a file to First Hawaiian Bank so we could get the money in the account the next day. Okay, First Hawaiian Bank said, oh, we should be able to do that. They went and looked at what our technology was. They said, these scanners don't do it. There's something that there's whatever it is, a mica line or whatever it is, it doesn't have it because it's such old technology. Therefore, we could not have them scanned and go in right away. The new scanners will have this ability where it scans the check and the money goes in the next day if people choose to do paper. They want to do e-filing, it's free to the taxpayer, okay? And that's part of the new system. But with the old scanners and the old system, we have to use a third party, and it costs money.
Okay, so how do you envision the new system working? Let's say you're gonna institute e-filing. So in your mind, so you gotta fire your GE. So how does it work?
Okay, I'll let you.
So when we're fully implemented, a business.
And when is that?
It's about 4 years.
Okay, 4 years. So
Yeah, the schedule is on the third page there.
Okay, so you're not gonna implement full e-filing system until end of 4 years, as opposed to this personal income tax rollout 1. The rollout 1 is not
The rollout one is to improve our interfacing with the IRS.
So you're not gonna be able to do any kind of, so where in this rollout are you gonna implement full e-filing system?
So if you, for general excise, we'll have a full e-filing for general excise on
August 15th?
Yeah, sorry, August of
2016.
16, yeah.
So at the end of each rollout, you're gonna have e-filing for this. So
For the
let's
things
talk
that are in
about-
that rollout.
Yeah, so let's talk about general excise tax. You file general excise tax. How does it work?
So as a business, you would go and set up an account on the internet for your business, and if you say you pay both general excise and transient, you'll be able to then file returns for both of those taxes at that point and make payments with essentially, it's called ACH. It's like an electronic check, which will be free to the taxpayer and essentially free to the state also. It's something that comes with our software.
Right. So you pay that, and then it gets assessed within
Sorry.
24 to 48 hours, according to what the financial
We would send it to
institution-
the bank that night. The banks sometimes have a two-day
Okay, so you're gonna
turnaround.
get rid of the mail scanning process.
For the taxpayers that choose to use it. And we do expect a decent amount to choose to use it. Some states do, and I expect Hawaii will do this. They start with some mandates. Once the software's there, it now puts you in a position to do mandates. And you would say everyone with turnover above a certain amount must pay electronically. And you can even mandate filing electronically. And then what we've seen in some states over the years, they keep lowering that number. And we have a couple customers where they've mandated full e-file and e-pay across their entire taxpayer base for a GE tax. I mean, they call it sales tax, but for the equivalent. So that's an option. But without any mandates, I would expect before too long to get to about 50% usage on e-file and e-pay so that paper does go away. To the scanners, you have income tax where you're going to have people who will just file by paper, and you're always going to have some paper coming in. But for businesses, it's not unrealistic to expect a very high percentage to start going electronic.
And so for rollout one, you expect no e-filing implemented?
It will for rollout one, not really. No,
Because that's just
we're
the federal.
It's the IRS.
we're improving the interface with the
So
IRS.
what is this personal income tax?
So what happens in the income tax world is a lot of people use a provider like TurboTax or H&R Block or something like that, and the IRS actually does get both a state and a federal return electronically. So it is truly e-file, but it's e-file via the federal government, and this gateway is for us to receive the state part of that filing from the IRS. So
after rollout 2, you should have e-filing for everything that's under rollout.
Exactly,
2 then.
yes.
And then for rollout 3, by August 14, 2017, it will be all e-filing for that.
Yes, and at that point, with withholding and GE, you're going to have a large majority of both your volume and money from businesses.
So if the state legislature wants to couple that deadline with some type of a mandatory e-filing requirement or a penalty for non-e-filers with, I would think, some exceptions, then you would be willing to look at that then. And then you can meet these deadlines to couple the deadlines.
Yes, and I just throw out one other consideration for the legislature. We will offer a way to do this for free with, again, an electronic check. There's still the question of credit cards, and what most jurisdictions have is the whole issue of who will pay the 3%, and some jurisdictions have chosen, the state has chosen to eat the 3% and let taxpayers pay by credit card. That's a choice, but certainly we're going to have a way to do it for free with an e-check.
If I can just follow up
Sure.
on some of the contract questions, so maybe a little more basic questions than the e-filing and whatnot. I know I'm looking at your contract right now, and based on what you gave us, the contract says that it's actually for no more than $30 million in terms of what will be paid to the contractor. But if I take a look at the documents you gave us in terms of the milestone payment schedule,
Yes.
and what we've talked about in the past, you have $32 million worth of itemized
Yes.
expenses or deliverables that you'll be paying the contractor. So essentially, I'll have a couple questions here. Essentially, the contract that you've awarded to the vendor and the deliverables,
Right, no, I
total,
understand.
they don't add up.
No,
That's
understood.
there's $2 million discrepancy there in terms of the official contract that you've awarded and the
Yes.
amount
Yes.
that you have for that amount. Not to mention the fact that there is the question of the $27.9 million outstanding that the legislature will have to consider for the next biennium.
Yes.
In addition to that, if you take a look, and I appreciate you folks giving us the breakdown in terms of when all of those itemized deliverables will be invoiced and when essentially you'll need to have them delivered by in order to receive payment.
Right.
We took a look at the invoice date and the invoiced amount. Based on that, roughly about a third of the $30 million or so basically would have already been completed by this particular point and invoiced. Everything ranging from the Gentax application software installation, hardware, third-party software purchase, project preparation, rollout one base configuration start, as well as $750,000 for facilities. And the way it's laid out, it's really hard to see if that's a monthly cost or if that's just a one-time annual cost. I'm thinking it's an annual $750,000 cost.
Yeah.
But basically, over $10 million would have already been expended to this point.
Right. We have not paid anything thus far, but yes, theoretically,
Okay,
based on this.
But if that's the case, then you're also delayed in terms of when your deliverables are supposed to have been met, and whether or not there's a particular reason, and if that's pushing back your timeline at all, and if there's a reason for that, So that's one of the questions we had, and also looking at the breakdown in terms of the cost, which again, is very, very helpful to see the milestone payment schedule. A lot of this is being paid by the
CIP.
the CIP,
Yeah.
which is that $32 million. But again, the $30 million is what you have in your
Yes,
contract.
yes.
But that being said, looking at the $27.9 million that would be anticipated or would be requested of the future legislature,
Yes.
11 million and change or so of that is with post-warranty maintenance and support.
Correct.
The question would actually be, and I don't know if you've conferred with council or anyone on this or BNF or someone, is whether or not you can actually pay that amount with CIP or if you're going to have to pay that roughly $2 million plus annually in general funds. Because I don't think we can actually use geo bonds for those kind of payments.
I don't believe so either.
So whether or not you have to actually break down those costs in terms of capital costs versus operating
Right,
costs going
right.
forward.
And BNF is aware of that. We've
So I
shared all
think
this
that needs
with
to
them.
also be broken down in terms of the kind of requests they're going to make to us
Sure.
in terms of it's not just going to be a 27.9 CIP cost going forward. You're looking at operating costs, and that's going to be adding to
No,
the
I'm
operating
just-
costs for this, given that those are warranties. So
Right.
I've got a few other questions, but basically we'll start with those for
Okay,
now.
yeah. And Chair, if I should mention, right now, as I mentioned earlier, is that we actually, TSM program has $3 million that per year in general funds that's been authorized. So in our view, that $2 million would be, covered under general fund, because we wouldn't, except for maybe some minor training or something, that would easily cover that. So that's the thinking there. But we have actually shared all of these schedules with BNF. They're aware of that. I know you asked a question on timeline, and now I forgot what the
Well, I can just say on timeline, as one example, and there's a few, part of our contract with the state is to provide an office. And when we put these estimated invoice dates, we were kind of putting a earliest we're going to invoice for this for planning purposes. But our expectation is that we won't actually invoice until the lease is finalized and we're actually getting moved into this office. So we will invoice later than this date, but it was, we always kind of expected that it was going to end up taking a little bit of time to get the office space prepared. We didn't know exactly when it would be ready, but we put a date there that would essentially give the earliest the state would ever have to pay that. And so all of these dates are earliest dates, but they're deliverable based, so we don't really get to invoice and get paid until we've done what we said we would do. In this case, provide an office.
Right, but I think it's also, we're looking at these dates in particular because they are deliverable dates. And so from the legislative standpoint, especially this committee, these dates are critical in the sense that, I think while you're looking at it in the sense that, well, we won't get paid until we deliver them, we're looking at them in terms of,
I understand.
When are they? These are dates when we know we'll actually get product, and so as we see these dates tick by without product, obviously for a legislature that has seen many dates tick by without product or have had failed issues in the past, that's going to be cause for concern. So rather than giving perhaps not, just loose estimates, I think we have to have real estimates in terms of time, in terms of when you think you're going to actually have those deliverables delivered. Because essentially, if you take a look at it, you're pretty top heavy in terms of the when you're going to expend most of your funds at the front end as well as the back end. It looks like much with the warranties and whatnot, about $9 or so million in the end. The last fiscal year, about 10+ million just in this first fiscal year. When are you actually going to have those deliverables delivered to us, given that you're not going to get paid until you actually complete the job? So we know when we can expect rollout 1 to begin, when we can expect the hardware to come in, when we can expect roll 2 to begin. Because again, this is a legislature that has seen many things not completed, and it's important for us to make sure that it's done with some fidelity. So I think that's why, while, like you said, you just put a date in there and you're not sure if it's going to be there or not. We're looking at that closely.
And I understand, and you're absolutely right. There are, if you look under the Royal One activities and the milestone dates and payments there, those are more to what you're talking about. Those are important milestones and dates that we need to meet in order to deliver on time at the end. We're going to move forward, and we are moving forward. We've already started work, and we're already working toward these dates. Whether we have our final office space or not, it's not going to stop us from proceeding.
And the final office space was one of the lower amounts on what should have already been done by now. So, I think that's, out of all of the payment milestones that I indicated, the $750,000 for the office space was not necessarily the one I was queuing into.
Okay.
4.3 million, 4.9 million for installation, or at the very least purchase. Whether or not that's been invoiced because it's already been completed. I think it's a basic question of project management. Do we have a project management team in place? I know it was mentioned that you do. Who's sitting on that? Is OIMT sitting at the table to make sure that, yes, we can check that box off with some fidelity because we have done that. So, yes, when the invoice comes, we can pay. That's kind of the question from a financial standpoint as well. Our contract says $30 million, even though the bills are going to come in for $32 million. Are we okay with that? At the same time, the entire project rolled out is for $59 million. How are we going to make this happen? Are we having someone on our project management team account for all of this? These are the kinds of questions that even just in the initial stages of looking through some of these documents we're going to have. So I guess, do we have a project management team that incorporates more than your internal staff with some third-party eyes looking at how we're making sure that all the boxes are getting ticked off on a timely manner?
We do, and I probably should let maybe Maria talk to that. I'll just explain. Those first two, and they are large. The first one is essentially us delivering our software to the state on the state machines and ready to use in the project. We have actually done that.
Okay.
And as a company, we're just remiss. We've got a lot of things going on. We are focused on the office, and we basically are late invoicing, but the work is done. As far as the hardware, it is actually mostly all been ordered and even delivered. It's sitting in boxes, and we are starting to unwrap it and use some of it. But we're reluctant to invoice until we have it all kind of plugged in and let the state verify this is everything we're supposed to get, and it's all working. So I would say in both cases, it's more a case of us not being aggressive on invoicing. It's not a case of us being late.
Right. And obviously, too, you would want to make sure that everything was out of the box and plugged in, and that appropriate people on our teams were checking it to make sure that it was hooked up properly before we even paid any invoice that came to us. And that is something, but again, from a project management standpoint, do we have the appropriate people on the teams, both internal and external to the department, that are making sure that as these things come through, we can check those boxes off with some fidelity to say that we're on track, we're on time, If we're not quite on track, it's okay because we're taking the time to make sure that these things are done right.
Right.
Whether it's from a project management standpoint, from an IT standpoint, from a financial standpoint, that's really kind of the jurisdiction of, especially of this committee, to make sure from a dollars and cents standpoint that we're staying in line on budget, or know how much we're going to be expending going forward. Because
Right.
already we look like we've got some ongoing costs that will take us far beyond the scope
Right.
of this initial contract,
Right,
right?
right.
So who do we have on that project management team that, you know, we can definitely look to and say, okay, we're okay and we're covered?
Right. Well, we, of course, have our program manager, Robert Sue, who's, overseeing the whole project. From an independent standpoint, and well, let me back up, and he's assigned for each area, he has, project managers that are going to be handling different sections of this project. On top of that, we will have, as I mentioned, hiring. We're actually waiting on AG's office to get us a list for a deputy, a special outside deputy AG, but we want to get that RFP out for an IVNV, the independent validation and verification, and that will be our independent, person, third party that will be, verifying that, certain milestones have been achieved. So, and then, of course, lastly, we have an executive committee, including the CIO, who's involved in that as well, that we meet we're going to start meeting every 2 weeks and going over, the status of everything. So, we really do believe we have it well documented, and we want to be as transparent as possible.
I actually see the CIO. Could I actually have Todd, if he could come forward real quick, just to, and he might be familiar with some of the project management aspects of programs like this and putting it into place, and whether or not, again, part of the issue is making sure that we can, make sure all the boxes are checked off.
Right.
There's probably a lot of moving parts to this. Obviously, we'll have an IVNV. Sounds like some medical procedure, but making sure that it's done well, that person is appropriate, brought on board correctly. Hopefully you're involved in that process of even looking at the RFP for the IVNV contractor or vendor. But what are we doing? Hopefully you're involved in that to make sure that project management for such a big, modernization project is done right, or what are some things that we need to be mindful of going forward to stay on track?
So, good morning, Senator and representatives. We've been meeting. Robert was one of the first people I met when I came on board and got up to speed really quickly on what we're doing here. And then meeting with Maria, we do understand that there was a MOU signed between OMIT and Department of Taxation previously, so that was signed about 3 years ago, stating that OMIT would be the project manager for the tax modernization effort. We just have completed the stand-up of what we're calling our Project Management Center of Excellence, where we hired in June 5 project managers. So we are still in our infancy stages of coming up to speed and being able to replicate project management throughout the state. We are involved with this project. I am sitting on their, and I always forget the name, Executive Steering Committee for the tax modernization process. We also are in the midst of looking at setting up, and I think what you're asking for is not necessarily project management, but contract management. There's a distinct difference, and we as a IT department recognize that there's a huge gap in the state for that. So we are in the process of also looking at creating what we're calling a center of excellence for contract management. I believe we talked to a few of the senators and representatives about that as well. So we are in the process of doing that and applying all of those, what we're calling centers of excellence, onto the larger projects, such as tax modernization.
So hopefully this is one of those.
These are one of the
that
projects
we're
that's
gonna
on
be
the list.
Looking
Yes.
at it from a contract management standpoint, and again, maybe not something that Todd can help you fill in the gaps for, but on your contract, you have a $2 million gap in terms of what your contract says you can fund and what you have deliverables for. Is that just going to be that $2 million worth of deliverables are going to fall off the edge and will be added to the 29, or how is that going to work?
I believe when we actually determined the 30, maybe James, you remember better, I think it was just that we kind of made it an even, I know it sounds crazy, but I think we just made it an even number and made it 30. I mean, the schedule, we knew this didn't add up to the contract, but we wanted to just show you what had been, we wanted to designate or show you what the amounts that had been approved by the ledge was going to be earmarked for. But we knew, everybody knew going in that the 30 was not, was just a piece of it. I think it was just a rounding thing, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Let me try to answer this question. Actually, initially, as Director mentioned earlier, we try not to request the whole amount of the TSM funding. So we know we're going to give $30 million for the awarded contractors, but actually that $2 million to reserve. We have a vendor coming for IVMV, and that's what we budgeted. So we have some money for that. Yeah. So that was initially for that purpose. Yeah. You need to have a vendor come in, and we didn't ask for any money. Yeah. Thank you.
So the IVNV vendor needs.
We just budgeted
CIP,
roughly.
But he needs CIP money then too. He needs infrastructure hardware money, because I thought when I spoke with you folks, you said the IVNV contractor, you would be taking that portion out of the $3 million.
Yeah, that's what
So now I'm hearing two things where. You were.
Well, that's just in case. But initial plan back to 3 years ago, when we tried to plan for that one, we have report. The contract we're going to initiate start from $30 million and reserve $2 million just in case we don't have any money comes in, we can use that for it.
But you've had the $3 million for a while now.
$3 million, yeah, that's
so
for.
you could have anticipated when you were creating the RFP that you had $3 million going forward, and at that point you could have budgeted, right?
In 2020 hindsight, we should have probably just made the contract for 32. Yeah, I mean, and the two, whatever we're going to use for IVNV would be part of the 3.
Okay, so at this point, then you're just going to have to figure out how to cut off $2 million from the deliverables for the existing fiscal.
2018.
2018 and tack it onto your request for
exactly
the following.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll have to think of the logistics of it, but as far as an additional contract or something, because the monies are there, it's just a matter of the contract. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, I think Representative Onishi has a question, and Kobayashi after.
I'd like to try to connect two items. When we first met, or when we first visited the Department of Taxation, former Director Pablo said that there perhaps was $100 million that was not being collected, and that a tax modernization system would hopefully collect much of that $100 million. In both increased revenues and voluntary compliance. Is that still?
I don't really know where he got that number, what he was referring to.
Right,
I mean,
right. I don't remember the definition either.
I do know that in our age, when we look at aging, an aging report, the old money, I say old money, but the monies that are due from, 10 years ago is maybe from 5 to 10 years ago, kind of what we view as, the real uncollectible, or, it's highly unlikely we're going to collect it, is about that amount. But I'd be guessing. I don't really know what he was referring to. But as I mentioned earlier, I do truly believe that it will, the new system will, with the analytics and just with having better reporting. If you saw the reporting we have now, it's almost non-existent. We have to just massage stuff, and it's not like you could just press a button and get a report. It doesn't work like that.
Whether that $100 million is correct or not, my assumption is that there are at least tens of millions of dollars that is not being collected because of our current antiquated system.
Most of it is because, and you're absolutely, I would say that's accurate, and I think a lot of it is just simply because it's such a highly manual system that our auditors are caught up in so many, doing everything manually, and they can't help it. They're not, it's not an efficient process. With a better efficient process, our view is that we're going to more than double our abilities to do our audits. And, you know, just by that alone.
Suffice to say that there are tens of millions of dollars that could be collected.
I think that's accurate, yeah.
The second item is that you have a process in place that runs for 4 years, $30 million. And then after that, you have a second phase, if you will call it, that will cost $28 million approximately, that will run for another X number of years. I don't know how many years.
It actually, yeah, it goes to, I guess, to 2025.
So, I mean, the question that I have between these two items is that if you got more money faster, could we actually, as a state, benefit in the long run with greater revenues?
60 million.
I'm sorry.
If you got more money,
Yeah.
including that $28 million,
Yes.
or if you increase the pace of the current rollout that goes up to 2019, could the state, in the long run, benefit by more revenues?
Oh, I think that's correct. But I mean, you're saying make it expedite it, make it. I honestly, I don't think that. I don't know if that's. I mean, to do the rollouts faster, to accelerate them. Is that what you're? I'm not
Right,
sure.
to do the rollouts faster and to do that second phase, the $28 million faster, or simultaneous with some of the current.
Oh, I see. You know, I think it just comes down to, and I'll have James talk a little bit more about it, but I think it's really just a matter of resources, to be quite honest with you. I mean, you know, as it is, we're really, you know, we're challenged with what we, you know, with, even though folks are very, very excited about working on this project, we only have limited, you know, number of people and people with expertise. So I'll let James.
Good morning, Representative. It is a little bit of a case of, you know, elapsed time, I guess. It's kind of like it's hard for 9 women to have a baby in 1 month type of problem. 4 years, this kind of schedule is pretty standard for us in terms of what we do at other states. And the general feeling of states is going into it. They see demos, it looks nice, why is it going to take so long? And at the end of the 4 years, they're pretty exhausted and kind of saying, wow, that was a lot of work, and I can't believe we went that fast. We're going to be working at a pretty good pace. This time next year, General Excise will be in a brand new system with the e-services, and there's a lot of work to do between now and then in terms of business processes and training and testing.
So there's no benefit in trying to increase the pace or increase the rollout of that second $28 million?
Not really, sir.
And Representative, I just have our CIO just address that a little more.
And to answer your question, Representative, there's a limited number of, like the Director said, that there's a limited number of IT resources. We as well are looking at hosting a lot of this in what we're calling our GPC, our Government Private Cloud, and there are certain issues with how that data is secured and certain IRS things that need to be done for us to meet those standards in order to host this. So there's a rollout plan that we're working in conjunction with Department of Taxation to make sure that, you know, the system is put on, you know, I don't want to say where it is because of security reasons, but we're working on things, working with Department of Taxation to bring this on to our government network, and just accelerating this is not, or I would say adding additional monies to it to try to accelerate it, I don't think is a very good idea. We as a state don't have a very good track record of completing IT projects of over $10 million. I think we have about a 7% success rate as a state. Now, I don't know if that number is accurate. It's what I've been told. And so this is a really good plan. It's something that we all looked at and we're all in agreement with, that it's the right way to do it. I understand your concern that perhaps, if we could accelerate the timeline, we could get money back and, have a positive return on investment and things like that. But at this point, we are limited by the number of resources that we have. And I don't want to jeopardize the schedule because we have a lot of large IT projects that are going on at the state at this time. And, we don't want to compress that.
Could you say again, Director, when will the project be completed? That is that second $28 million. Did you say that it would be 2025?
I believe that's I was just looking at the payment schedule. The post-warranty maintenance and support, it looks like the payment is 2025. I'm just trying to see on the rollout. Just see here. Bear with me for a moment. Oh, actually, it shows the warranty period complete 2020, so I'm not quite sure. I'd have to ask James.
I think the way it's structured, the initial $30 million takes us through the first 3 rollouts, basically. So it's not for the entire 4-year project. It's for 3 of the 5 rollouts. So the other funds would be used for the remaining 2 rollouts and for the support and warranty period.
So when you get the second batch of money, the $28 million, when would that be completed, implemented?
So the system will be fully implemented in July of 19, in essentially 4 years.
4 years.
No,
And-
but isn't that just for the first phase?
No, the
The $28 million is to pay for all work to be completed by 2019.
for the 5 rollouts to be completed by 2019. The contract does include some additional years of maintenance and support beyond 2019. So the $28 million is paying for the final 2 rollouts and some additional years of maintenance and support.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, post-warranty
When,
maintenance. and
when
support.
does the tax department expect to come to the legislature for that second $28 million? What year? What fiscal?
At this point, I know it would.
Legislative year.
Yeah, I know it's not for this coming, obviously, for this coming year. I don't have an answer for you right now. We've been talking to Budget and Finance about it, and that's something that we'll have to work at. So I don't have a definite answer, but they're aware of it, and we've been talking to them about it. Yeah.
Who's next? Right there?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I got some follow-up questions regarding this independent verification.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what is the strategy by hiring a third party?
Okay. Yeah.
It's actually a approach that's fairly common around the country. It's an extra. The idea is it's someone independent of both the state and of us, the vendor, who will verify that the project really is on track, the deliverables really are being provided. So it's an assurance for the state that you have someone who's not too close invested is verifying that yes, this project is moving as it's supposed to be.
Okay, so can you explain to me how the situation would be handled if the independent person decided that it wasn't on schedule and you didn't have to pay, but the vendor takes the position that we have delivered everything and that they are mistaken? How does the state resolve that? Because we see that all the time in our building contracts between our professional services like architects and engineers and project managers and the construction company. So how is the department going to handle that? Can you explain that to me? Why are we putting that layer in there?
So I apologize, Representative. I'm not 100% sure on we've done this, and I'm about 3 months into the job, so I'm not 100% sure on all the protocols that would happen, but in the past, like what I've been working with on Connector and so forth is when we have an IVNV and there's a discrepancy between what needs to submit that, it's, I don't want to call it an arbitration, but there's an act that they sit down and we try to work through those issues. OMIT will be a much larger presence in this, and we will help resolve any issues that could come about because of it, because it's from a technical standpoint, I would say it's pretty cut and dry if something's working or it's not working, right? So it's either it's working and they met the deadline and...
I wouldn't necessarily agree to that. My background is in IT. I did that for 22 years at the county. Ran numerous projects implementing software and application systems. I've never seen an independent verification being used in the state of Hawaii. And with OIMT there, as supposedly the state overseer of our computer systems, why aren't you guys doing the verification of the system instead of us spending, I believe you said $3 million to hire an independent contractor that is going to put the state in jeopardy if they decide to contest what the vendor or the state feels is done or not done.
So, plain and simple, we just are not, we don't have the workforce to do it at this time. We don't have the people.
I told you just told us a little while ago you guys are providing oversight.
We are working on, like I said, we just stood up our project management office, and we are working on standing up best practices around contract management. These are things that, why they haven't been in the state before, I'm not sure. We don't have a center of excellence around project management.
I don't see this independent verification being a contract management consultant. Aren't you expecting them to use their technical expertise to verify that the deliverables have been delivered?
In this one, I'm not sure what the contract is for IVNV, because it can be both. I understand what you're saying. It can be both. It can be both technical and the fact that they're meeting the specs and the business requirements, right? So
I would just offer this. It is a common approach being used out there. The per year cost should not be terribly high. And we actually have been on a few projects where these things are structured not the year by year. And we've seen states decide after the first or second year, we don't need to spend this money. So I think I would expect the director and her staff will do the same thing. They will make sure they're seeing value out of it in that first year, and at that time assess whether they want to continue that or not.
Well, let me ask you this question then. Do you see the potential of a disagreement between you and the verification company?
Absolutely, there's that potential. I will say, if you just look at our projects, that's not very common. It's pretty rare, but it's absolutely a potential, yes.
So, given the fact that the state of Hawaii has a larger stake in ensuring that the project is done on time, within budget, and to the specifications that we want, doesn't it make more sense for us to have our own independent interdepartmental verification versus hiring somebody outside who is more worried about being paid and maybe trying to look at the possibility of areas of discrepancy in order to either draw out the project or to extend the project so that they could make more money? I mean, coming from the industry, I really don't see how this is going to benefit the state of Hawaii, especially when we see a lot of this happening in our building contract projects. So, I mean, again, I don't see this strategy.
So 100% in agreement with you, Representative, that we as a state should be able to audit our contracts, do the proper contract management, be able to look at requirements and tell the vendor that they're meeting it or not. We just don't have that. It's not built into our state system right now. We have 5 brand new project managers. We are in the process of building a contract management best practices effort. Why this wasn't in the state before, I can't tell you, but it's what we need to do exactly what you're asking for.
We have the AG's office, which can help you with the contract management, but supposedly you hired project managers that should have had some experience in project management.
They do.
And so they can determine when they need legal advice on the contract and what is technical flaws in the implementation that don't meet the specifications that is laid out in the RFP. So, or to what the vendor has proposed to do. So again, I still fail to see how the state doesn't have the appropriate resources in order to manage this project without going out to somebody who's independent, who could put us in a position where we're going to be, on their advice, at odds with the vendor that we're trying to work with. In my projects, I always tried to work with the vendor to ensure that the vendor had the best possibility of providing the product that we needed, not trying to be at odds with them.
Agreed.
And thereby creating conflict. So, you know, it again, from my experience, doesn't make any sense. But I do have another follow-up question for the staffing issue. So, 2 years ago, we provided 16 additional staff to Department of Taxation, and that was, those staff, through a memorandum of agreement, was assigned to OIMT to run the project. Am I correct?
I believe that is correct. I think so. Is that correct? I believe it was 18, actually.
Yeah, 18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the answer is correct. Yes, actually, the TIGA agreements that between Department of Taxation and OIMT.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Earlier you said that you now have a 12-person staff taken out of those 18, right? So was there a new memorandum of agreement drafted with OIMT?
We actually have right now, we have a draft of one that we're working together on. We're rescinding the original one.
Okay.
And so we have that.
So what are the other 6 people going to be doing at OIMT in regards to this project?
Well, they were additional positions those 6 additional positions are in DOE tax right now. And they're in compliance or in different divisions in DOE tax. Those folks will be detailed over to the TSM project as it's starting up. And they will be needed for, the various pieces for testing as a subject matter expert, that sort of thing. When I talked about the 12, those are kind of the 12 core folks that have been working 100% on just TSM from, the time of the, RFP and forward. The other 6 are in the departments, but they're entrenched in those because they have the expertise of how different areas work.
Okay, so your original agreement, your memorandum of agreement, or MOU.
MOU, yeah.
MOU was that of the 18, 12 would be assigned to OIMT.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
Actually, sorry. To answer your question, actually, the original MOU doesn't have that detailed layout for how the people, it doesn't even show the number of people, just showing about the support, the partnership between OIMT and Department of Taxation.
Yeah. It just shows the relationship between
Yeah.
the two.
Yeah.
Well, if my understanding was correct, when DOTAX came to the legislature to ask for these positions, the positions were granted for OIMT to provide the expertise the management and oversight for the project because DOTAX at that time felt that they couldn't do it.
These 18 folks are all, I don't really know the genesis or how, a little, some of that history, but I can tell you that all of these positions are under DOTAX's payroll. It's not an OIMT.
Oh, no,
It's an-
we understand that.
Okay, okay.
That was the agreement.
Oh, okay.
I mean, or at least my understanding at the time when we approved it.
Right.
So right now, all 18 are working for DOTAX.
Yes,
And DOTAX is the lead agency that is managing this project.
correct.
Okay, so you had 12 people working how long on the RFP, the procurement, or the review and the procurement of the, review of proposals and the final negotiation of the contract?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing started, RFP process started November of 2012, so I would think it was sometime from that point
Right,
on.
and you didn't have those 12 people then, though.
I don't know when you had them, when,
No, well, okay, so my question is, how many of them currently are working full-time on this whole process to get you to this point?
that's what I was saying, 12. The 12.
12, okay, so what are these 12 people going to be doing moving forward?
They're working on testing and working with the vendor.
Okay. Let me try to explain the organization chart of this, the TSM PMO office. We actually, in the TSM Program Management Office, that including project managers, senior business analysts, and under senior analysts, we have 3 business analysts. And then we have a technical analyst and security analyst. And under that, we have 3 IT specialists. Okay, and we also have a quality assurance, senior quality assurance. And just to answer your earlier question about the IVMV, I fully agree with that. The historical background for the IVMV, actually, it was because 2010 we had that, SCR 78, triggered audit. The state auditor actually recommend we have to have, a project management methodologies, the project will lead by IT professional, and also we recommend we have a third party, to verify and validate the projects. But, again, I fully feel my team is very competent. If the ledge, basically we try to satisfy the ledge requirement. And that's what original proposal when we start the TSM, we say want to secure your competent level, and so we propose to IVMB inside. But to me, I fully agree with the representative saying we are subject matter experts. So IVMB, we know what we need. We should be able to work with partner and coordinate with OIMT to make this project become successful. It's the state legislature auditor, come in. If you let's feel comfortable, we are fine with it. Yes.
And just to add to what Robert's saying, as I've talked to him about IVMV, because this was a new thing to me, I said to him, he said, I said, how much is an IVMV? And he said, well, it can go from anywhere. It could be $1 million or it could be 20 million, but the person is like, you've got somebody living there and you got all the consultants and, that's certainly not what we want. And what Robert even said to me was, we'll just do something. They come maybe once a quarter, and after maybe the first year, once we've gotten kind of past that, if we're comfortable, we can just let them loose, we don't, or let them go, we don't need to have them. So we never really thought of them as a long-term thing because we really have a lot of confidence in our vendor and in his staff and how it's being managed and working with OIMT. With that partnership, we felt very comfortable, but because and I had forgotten about that it was something that was part of an auditor report, Robert felt we needed to do it, and of course I wasn't going to disagree with it. But thanks for reminding me.
Well, I really appreciate Representative bringing out the issue. To make sure we spend the taxpayer money wise. As long as we have a competent team, I think we can do it. And again, that's because that's what we originally proposed to lobby to get support for this TSM to ensure your trust. Then we put the IVMV. But at this moment, I can fully tell you, I'm very confident we have the best PMO team in the TSM. The 6th position that you have, we have the reason why they can come in because those people basically want to use for data cleansing and testing because projects just start, so they haven't get on board yet. But we haven't in the division area to familiar with the daily operation. So when the project already get to that level, pretty soon they're going to come in to do data cleansing and testing, all the kind of stuff, activity. And again, we very appreciate the state support. We're working on OIMT, trying to make sure we do due diligence and we make sure this will be a successful project. Yeah, so that's why.
So this might be an area to reconsider.
Sure, yeah. If you,
Okay.
you know, everybody confident. I'm here to promise. I will watch, make sure we don't even need IVMB. I'm glad you bring up this one because I was afraid to bring out that for everybody's attention because we are competent to do that work, coordinate partnership with OMT. We can make it. Yes, because we need subject matter expert to IVMB. We don't want to bring a third party vendor that doesn't know our project, doesn't know our subject, and become another struggle. Yeah, so that's my answer for your question. Yeah, thank you.
Chair, I have a few other questions, but I'll give up the mic for somebody else.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm very concerned about cost overruns, just like other members of the legislature. I've been burned many times when people tell me on time and on budget when I was in the council. I'm reading the contract that was signed July 2015, and on page 11, item 21, it says something about price adjustment. It's not airtight the way I look at it. If you read the way of adjusting prices, we are at the receiving end. One of the provisions, for example, is any adjustment in the contract pursuant to the provision shall be made in one or more of the following ways. Number 4, in such manner as the parties may mutually agree. So the price that is in here on the first 28 plus million is not definite. It has some moving parts. If you look up 1 to 5 price adjustment, we are in danger of cost overruns. Can somebody explain to me why this contract is done this way?
I really can't answer you. I mean, this is a typical state contract, so I'm not really quite sure. I don't have any legal expertise.
Can you read the first item and let me see?
I'm sorry?
On the page 11,
I
item
see.
21,
Yeah,
price
I see.
adjustments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. We kind of think this was an AG template, but we're not really quite sure. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, but you folks signed it.
But I understand, but it was. Okay.
Signing without understanding how those price adjustments are going to be made.
I think if I could, it's difficult. It can be awkward to not have any provision for a price adjustment. If the state came to us and said, we want to stop the project for a year, we want all you people to go home, and then we want you to come back later and start again, that is going to have an impact, and we will say, that's going to end up needing to be some kind of change order, because that's not how we propose this and plan this, that we're all going to go home for a year. So it can be awkward to have no provision for any changes at all. And that I think the contract needs something. However, generally what I find is the state, the vendor cannot force a change. The state must agree that it's a change they want, and they must agree to the amount of money. What I can say, and past performance is never a guarantee of anything. I understand that, but we're a small company, and our competitors are very large international IT firms that everybody knows the name of very well. The reason we're doing this business is because in the 18 years we've been doing this, we don't do price adjustments. It's kind of our.
You don't do price adjustments.
We don't do price adjustments. It's our calling card. It's our reputation. So it's part of the reason the state hired us. And if we change that, then we would be no different than those other firms, other than we're much smaller and we'd be viewed as.
So who made those price adjustments? Is it the state?
It would be.
Don't. And why?
Senator, just as an FYI, this is a typical template from the AG. This is an AG's template for a contract. So, we're looking at it. It says AG general conditions. So this is obviously standard conditions. I can't, I can only give you that. We were relying on our AG. Yeah.
Will there be a great possibility that the amount stated in the contract will be way more than what is stated? You cannot say anything.
We don't believe so. We really don't. But there's no reason that we believe that that would happen.
So assuming there is a cost overrun, where will you get the money to plug it?
We don't believe there will be a cost overrun. I mean,
But if there is, where?
we'd have to address it if it
Okay,
comes.
my last question is this. Assuming we do everything based on the contract, what's the degree or percentage of improvement to what is happening now? Will it be 100% better? 10%, 50%, or what?
I'd say it would. I mean, it's kind of a subjective number, but I'd have to say it's going to be 80% better. I mean, that would just be a number I'd give. But if you knew what our staff goes through every day, you would understand that it's going to be almost 100% better than what it is right now. Improvement.
May I make a comment here? I think everybody, a lot of us here are talking about the revenue we're going to bring in from this, tax moderation. But the reality, because I'm in the tax department as CIO for 8 years, I have seen if we don't do it, the failure, still going to lose the $6 billion revenue. And that operation is very big impact because I have seen system crashes 100 times at night. And so if we cannot use a tool to help to collect the tax revenue, also serve the customers, the taxpayers and citizens, and that's a reason, a good justification. So not just to bring more revenue, but also secure the revenue stream for the state.
No, I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
We are all for that. The question is, the cost overruns later on, where will you get the money? And be careful with that because on time and on budget is a cheap word.
Yeah, that's my
Thank you.
commitment and promise. Yeah, we'll make sure it's on time, in budget, and meet the scope. Yes. Thank you.
I
And
don't
if,
like to be burned one more
Yeah.
time.
Thank you very much.
if I may just say, and that's something we really didn't talk about, only because, we talk about, it's highly manual, it's an inefficient system, but what Robert just said, this is a highly unstable system we have right now. We literally, the joke in the office is when he walks in, it's like you close your eyes when you turn on. I know it's not as simple as that, but when you turn it on, the button on and to turn on the system, we never know when this thing is going to crash. And if it crashes, we're in serious trouble. As he said, $6 billion of revenue flows through our system. So this is not something we take lightly. We take this very, very seriously. And that's really what the genesis of. It's not only that it's new and improved and it's the latest model. We're desperate for this for something new because we're very afraid that we have an unstable system that's going to crash and never get back up.
If you could just follow up, but if you take a look at the attachment 3 in the RFP that was provided by the vendor, he did list down 23 requests for exceptions to the contract, various things, even in terms of lowering the bond that would be provided, and I guess that was not accepted given that the bond remained at $5 million, I think, versus $1 million. But there were also some other things like which would apply to the penalty provisions, what could be considered a penalty, as Senator Sloman asked about, in terms of liquidated damages or termination for convenience provisions. What exceptions were made to the contract based upon what he requested? Were any of the 23 provided in the contract, or was the contract where all 23 not provided as part of the negotiation of the contract?
None of the exceptions
Actually,
were.
during the contract negotiation, the vendor has dropped all exception and
so
fully
none of the
compliant. No more,
exceptions?
no exception. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for being here. Todd, are you capable is OIMT capable right now of providing the oversight that we mentioned IVNV? Is OIMT capable right now of providing IVNV capabilities of this project?
No, we don't have,
Okay, so now we're taking the word of Mr. Su, basically that this project is going to work out. No, I'm not asking you, I'm asking you.
Well, so when I say no, we don't have the ability to manage the whole, because if you look at the MOU, what it's
Right
asking
now.
for right now, it's asking
Okay,
for
that's
us
enough.
to
I'm going to
project.
come back to that later.
Okay.
I have some more questions for Maria and Robert. One of the first things you mentioned in this presentation is managing risk. What are the key project risks you were talking about, alluding to at the beginning?
I think, well, do you want to?
Okay. As a TSM program manager at this moment, I look at the biggest risk we have is department under the current shortage of staffing.
No, I'm talking about the project. I'm not talking about right now.
The project, the risk is, at this moment, we still struggling to try to get full staff to be able to meet such a intensive project. So the number one risk I can see of this one is resources. Yeah.
I think we have a lot of confidence with this vendor, and they have a great track record, so we like that. But as Robert said, that I would have to say is the biggest risk. Is
I don't understand.
Resources.
What does that mean?
Well, when I say resources, staffing. We have to detail other people. It's not just the TSM team. We have to use other subject matter experts to get involved. So, resources is the biggest. When I say risk, it's just that people have their regular jobs, and I have to say, okay, today you can't do that. We need you to test this or whatever. So when I say risk, it's just a matter of detailing people. Something else doesn't get done if I've got a person that's not part of the TSM team, but we're pulling them out. We need a lot more people than just 18. That's not going to do it.
You mean if this rollout doesn't go correctly?
No, it has nothing to do. The rollout can go totally textbook. But the bottom line is to do testing and to do various things and to consult with how does this work exactly. You've got to get the people that are from behind the lines, the back office people, the people that know it, not just like people like Robert or your Todd's or myself or whatever. We might say, oh yeah, that sounds really good, but the bottom line is it's the back office people that know the procedures, and we've got to draw them in and pull them in and say, wait, does this make sense or whatever? But while they're doing that, they're not processing a return or they're not auditing a return.
So you're saying one of the primary risks of this project is that even if it is rolled out effectively and efficiently, there still might be hiccups in implementation, in which case you'd have to draw from your existing resources to help smooth out.
Yeah, it's really a matter. It's very late management intensive. That's what we're working very closely with, trying to get the timing of when we need certain people, so people will know. I don't want to just knock on somebody's door and say, hey, we need you now for the next month. That's not fair to them either. They need to plan appropriately. So we're trying to do that, make all those plans, working with the vendor, working with Robert, and working with all the division heads and branch chiefs. So it's a matter of management, but that is a risk. That's the only thing. I feel very comfortable with this software. I think this is, it's tried and true. We just have to get it implemented, and that means we need to, put it so it works for our system, and that means people.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we as an IT and project management team to do this, it's not, we will not be the end users. The reason why I'm mentioning about resources, we have to make sure end users are satisfied, meet their demand. If they are not available for testing, that's what I'm saying about risk, because we have a tax season. They're busy doing the tax season. We have to plan very carefully. But bottom line is, we have to satisfy our user. In that we say, pass, it pass. The user has to satisfy, and that's why I'm talking about resources. They play a very critical role.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
Thank you.
I was just going to give a couple quick examples. Part of the scope of the project is to bring the old data over to the new system. And so we need agency people to be looking at that data as we try to load it when it won't load for various problems. And then, it's normal with an old system that the data is going to have problems. So that's one example of how we need agency resources to do this project successfully. It's not about whether there's a bug or not. Just even if it's perfect, there's work for the agency to do. Data cleanup is one example. Training, testing, or other examples.
Okay, and so on page 12 of your packet, you talk about performing a risk assessment. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, we will verify all those. So every time when we're steering committee, we always bring up the project status and also identify where's the risk. And so we can have a management participate, because I don't manage those user side, and then their managers should know how much resource can release it so we can coordinate and communicate, fully understand the status, and also bring up what we need and where's the risk level. Yeah. So we have a transparent operation for this.
Okay, so why is that a long-term strategy and not a short-term or immediate? Why is the risk assessment something for later and not for now?
Okay, the short-term strategy is because we just finished our tax season and start on this contract, but we have a tax season coming right away. So in order to coordinate and make sure we can be able to deliver a proper system to meet the 2016 January tax return, we can process. So we have a temporary solution. We'll make sure also coordinate OIMT to make sure our data centers, our disaster recovery fully comply with IRS 1075 security guideline. And we do it very careful. So it is, we don't fail our productions. That's why we short-term strategy. Make sure our productions still keep going. We can scale our revenue stream plus $6 billion operation. And then when everything ready, we try to choose a non-tax season time so we can migrate to permanent solution. And that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you can't do a risk assessment right now because your PMO staff is currently over capacity on regular maintenance and operations issues.
No, we're still doing our risk assessment, yes.
So how come you can't do the risk assessment now?
We do it now, yes.
But it says long-term strategy.
Long-term strategy is migrate to permanent data centers. Right now, OIMT.
When will the risk assessment be done, and can the legislature see it?
The risk assessment always continues.
Okay, can I see a copy of the one you have now?
Sure, we'll send you the risk assessment. So far, what we have now. Yeah, we do have that in file, yes.
But then there's another long-term one that you're going to develop at some point.
Well, again, the risk assessment, it keep going. When roll out, the project keep rolling, a different risk might come out. At that time, we keep updating our risk management, yes.
So do you have a management plan in place to respond to the risks that you have in the risk assessment?
Yes, we do have a staff that specializes handle the risk management.
Okay,
and again,
can we see the plan also?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I have another question. Someone asked earlier about benchmarks for performance of the contract. Can you explain what the contract performance benchmarks are?
As I have mentioned earlier, besides our scope, the benchmark we actually rely on our users testing, they satisfy and meet the job function requirement. So we use that as a guideline. Bottom line is the user has to accept the system because they are the one going to operate and use the system. So the benchmark actually based on user side, not from IT perspective. IT will make sure that meet IT standards, meet our security requirements, so we can protect taxpayers' information, no more breach. But the user going to use application system, and this application system, so the benchmark besides IT will also make sure the user accept it.
But so those, so you're saying there's operational benchmarks, so to speak. So are those integrated in your management plan that you've determined based off of your risk assessment?
Yes. This part, the whole TSM actually is not saying about we're going to see the deliverable 48 months from now. We actually roll out. Each roll out, we have a checkpoint and make sure we can roll it over. But once we roll over, it will turn over from TSM program itself become production. Mm-hmm. So production and the TSM program itself actually is interrelated. Mm-hmm. The data change daily will make sure smooth transitions. And again, all this depends on everybody's teamwork and efforts to collaborate, working together. Yes.
So I don't understand any of that you just explained. And so isn't that why we need OIMT project managers to provide oversight so that when they go through your risk assessments and management plans and identify whether you're performing or the vendor is performing and reaching those benchmarks, don't we need somebody to provide the legislature and people like myself and your director who said they don't have IT experience some sort of translation to determine whether or not the vendor is performing adequately and whether or not you folks are following up on your promises that you are properly monitoring and managing the project?
And that's why we're meeting every 2 weeks. We'll be meeting every 2 weeks to review it. We have OIMT as well as an executive committee at DOTAX.
But he just said that they're not capable of providing that type of oversight right now.
Yeah, but...
Okay, so let me make a clarification on that. Right. So we're talking about a $65 million contract that's happening right now. So it's right. So so that's why we're asking for the IVNV. Okay, because to be truthful, I'm not going to be able to hire a project manager that has managed a $65 million contract or $60 million contract at what we can pay as a state, right? That's just the bottom line. So I'm telling you right
How
now,
much do we have to pay them?
you probably have to pay them about $200,000 in that range. So
You guys
if
get $2 million that's unaccounted for, right?
if you guys can figure out how to go through the DHERD process and make that happen for us, great.
So
But-
isn't that why
So
we do IVNV?
that's one of the reasons why we're on a project as large of this. We're advocating for us to do the IVNV, right? Because we need oversight. We need help making sure that this project is going to be successful.
Okay, I have another question. How come we don't have IVNV oversight over the project right now?
It hasn't, yeah.
It hasn't started yet.
Why not? I'm sorry for the tone.
Well, hello, they just came on
Okay.
board on July 15th, and
Okay, so how come we didn't have IVNV or the equivalent oversight during the RFP process?
we had, during the RFP, that was just during the procurement period. I mean, IVNV is a validation of something that's already in process, a contract that's already in place. There was no contract in place.
What I'm asking is, who was there to provide technical oversight over you guys during the RFP and procurement process? Shouldn't there be a report or something that we as the legislature can see that says
We
the
have all of that
individuals-
paperwork. We have everything in procurement. We've done everything
So
in
who's
accordance.
responsible for the $2 million discrepancy between the contract
There's-
and the listed
No,
price?
there's no discrepancy. As Robert said, it was just something that was determined that we would hold back because we didn't have enough for the whole project anyway. That was really the bottom line, is we knew that we needed $59 million, so it was just a matter of, I forgot actually the $2 million was set aside for that, but bottom line is the $30 million, if it was 30 or 32.
So
We
isn't it
still need
OIMT's job to come to us and say, yeah, Maria and Dotax made a clerical error
We
to
didn't
the
make a
amount
clerical-
of $2 million
Let me just
in
clarify, we did not
contract
make a
language?
clerical error. We knew exactly what we were doing
Well,
when
you
we
at least
made
made
it
a
30
clerical
million.
error in the documents you provided us then.
No, we did not. We knew, what we wanted to show was that, because technically we could enter into another contract with Fast Enterprises for $2 million and whatever change, right? We have the money, the appropriation is there. That schedule was simply to try to show $32 million in 2000 was appropriated by the ledge, and that we were actually, this is that money that you appropriated to us, we were able to, it gets us to through fiscal year 2018. That's why we wanted to reconcile that to that number. Okay, it was not something that we, as I said, with the contract, we still could do it to this day. We could go in and do another contract for $2 million, and and then it would be fine. That wasn't an error. That was just something that, as I said, that was just.
Can you do a contract for $200,000 for IVNV?
Well, that's what we're right now. We're working
right
on.
now?
We're working right now with the AG's office to get us a special deputy AG for IT services so they can work with us. We have an RFP draft right now for IV&V, okay? But we want them to get involved, and then, of course, OIMT as well. And then we'll work together. But we're just waiting. There's, I guess, a committee that's forming, and they need to get those together, and then they'll select a special deputy AG, and then we can proceed with that RFP. Once that RFP gets out, then we'll get the proposals and we'll be forward. But we've been trying to do this from when we were still talking to Fast Enterprises back in June, or even prior to that. So we're in the process.
Todd, is
Yes,
this deputy
Representative.
AG that the director is talking about going to have the technical expertise?
We're gonna, well, within the RFP, we're gonna make sure and we'll be included in this process of making sure that that person has the right credentials to oversee this. What usually happens in my experience when you go out with an RFP for this, it comes back as a consulting firm. And what we don't want to have is what we've had in the past where consultants are managing consultants, right? We want to make sure that we're getting the right technical expertise that has done this, not has just done a technical audit, but has worked in tax, understands the IRS regulations, has hopefully seen the software, has hopefully had some experience working on this software to know the hiccups that they've saw or run into in the past so that they can help us. I agree with you, Representative. We suck at doing certain things, and we're here trying to make things better, right? That's why we're trying to stand up the PMO office statewide. We're trying to stand up a contracts management office statewide. These are the things that are going to ensure that we get the value for what we spend as a state. And so I understand all of us are in the same boat with you. We don't understand why things have happened, but we're trying to make them better as we move forward. We're trying to sail the ship and build it at the same time.
And with all due respect, Representative, we feel we're actually, I personally am very proud of the staff that has accomplished what they've accomplished thus far. We know we need to get this system in. But we also realize we have to be accountable. Just as CIO said, the state has been miserable at getting successful, software packages are implemented, and we want to be able to do that and be proud of that. That's why we've done this in smaller stages. And even though you might view it as something that doesn't reconcile, the bottom line is we did this purposely because we wanted to show small successes, and we wanted to show, hey, we're deserving of getting that additional monies because we've shown successes. We've already got the GE in, and we've got the withholding or whatever. If you see that, we're hopeful that we'll be able to get that additional funding. And plus, you'll see, hopefully, the benefit of additional revenue from this better system, because now we can do things that we just simply can't do now. So, bottom line is, that's all I just, want to mention to you is that, we are very much, we're very much, we feel that we realize we have to be accountable. We realize a lot of you are very tired of seeing, failures. And that's why this is different than what you may have seen in the past. We know it's a little weird, but the bottom line is we had a vendor who was willing to work with us on this, and that is willing to have a contract that doesn't add up to what it's going to cost to do the whole system. We thought this was a good thing. It's not a sexy solution, but it's something that we felt would be something more palatable to the legislature. We're very, very cognizant of taxpayer money. We don't want to waste it. We do not want to do that.
I agree, and I'm not accusing, I think it's encouraging that Robert has come here today and laid out the plan that you folks have, and that it seems to be an improvement based on the recommendations of the audit. I'm not saying, I'm not disparaging the people in your office or the folks who are working on this project right now. All I want to know is who's providing oversight of those folks, because it's supposed to be us, but I don't feel prepared to go through the particulars of the contract to be able to identify where there are discrepancies. And OIMT has just said that they don't have the capability to do it. And it does not sound like, from what they're saying, a deputy AG has the capability of doing it. And so...
No, it's not going to be like a deputy AG from the...
So the deputy AG is not going to be...
It's a title, really. Sorry.
It's a special IT
It's a
designated.
title.
Yeah.
So, but when you're at it's going to be part of the IV. It's the right person. Remember, the deputy AG is a title as well. It's not necessarily coming from the AG's office. Sorry.
When will IVNV be in place?
As I mentioned, we're in the process right now of just waiting for that special deputy AG to be chosen. Then we have an RFP already. Robert's got it done. We want to then work with OIMT and with the special AG and get that done, ironed out, and then we're ready to go into procurement and send that out. So, we're, like I said, we're just waiting on getting that it has to be a deputy AG, a special outside one that has specific IT experience, so they know what they're talking about. It can't just be a person that has general law background.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
James, did you want to say something? Yeah.
If it's of interest, I was going to try to explain the 30 versus 32 a little bit. We had laid out in our proposal a payment plan and some pricing. There was some adjustments to the pricing, but we then looked at, within these fiscal years, how much of this would end up getting paid to us. And it just so happened that the last payment in that fiscal year was going to get us to 30. And instead of saying, can you just give us 32 anyway, we said, that's fine, just pay us 30 and hopefully you can carry that money over. The next payment that would be due to us is in the following fiscal year, and it's a $3 million payment. So that would have put us over at that point, and it was going to come later anyway. So I think that's kind of why we were only asking for 30 up to that point.
Okay, thank you. The point I'm trying to make is, I think we should have someone here explaining what you just explained to us that is not a member or a part of the agency that is actually doing the procurement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I probably have more questions than you have time. First and foremost, thank you, chairs, for providing this informational briefing. I appreciate it very much because the 5 years that I've been here, I have been doing nothing but nailing dough tax. I have been not thrilled with what I've heard from dough tax on providing reports to the legislature, providing technical information on possible credits being requested or removed. You can't even provide any data to us, and your excuse has always been, we need to implement this new tax system.
Yeah.
Okay, right now what I'm hearing, I'm still not comfortable where we're going, and I understand all the technical, the contract. I'm not comfortable with the contracts. What I'm really not comfortable is the layout of your system. First, I want a clarification. The personal income tax MEF process, I'm assuming that's the Internal Revenue Service portion of it. The IVR, that's going to be when people call our system, which was, we've heard it for the last 3 or 4 years. We don't have enough people staffing that. As soon as you get hired staff in there, they spin out into another portion of your department. And we just can't keep people hired to answer the calls. I totally understand all that. The imaging of the hardware, that would be our new scanners, correct? Okay, that's all fine and dandy. You're going to do that by the ending of this year, 2015. Tax season starts 3 or 4 days after that. Where's your technical testing on this system to make sure my scanners are ready for those first batch filers that first week in January? I am not confident with that. Then I'm going to start looking at this. Then you're going to start getting Internal Revenue Service system coming from us, from all those filers coming over. That data is going to now be shared with the state of Hawaii, like it currently has been and has been sitting there somewhere on the shelf until a manual person goes in there, picks it up, and cross-checks. Okay? Sorry, I might get a little technical. You'll understand this, and I'm sure your vendor will understand this. All that data is going to start now coming over from the Internal Revenue Service starting this January. That data is still going to sit on the shelf. That data is going to sit on the shelf until we can start matching when your GE starts coming up online a year later. Okay? My personal income tax don't come out until year 4. This contract you're talking will roll out in 4. The contract he's talking about is only the first 3 rollouts. We're not even talking about the individual taxpayer until our next contracting period, when our chairs were talking about the $27, $28 million you're going to need to come in and ask for. That's my biggest concern, because it's our individual taxpayers that we should be cross-checking that information with the IRS and our filers here in Hawaii, not only for fraud, but are we getting paid our correct individual tax monies to our state and our coffers. My withholding comes in year 3, but again, I'm not going to have any data to cross-check that with. That's where I'm starting to be very leery of this, and I know we got to start somewhere. We're starting now. We're like 3 years behind on this already. You know, when you're reporting your monies to the Council of Revenues, we're depending on that to be accurate.
Sure.
And I'm not going to have faith in that accuracy for another 4 years.
Well, I don't think, if I may, Rep, you know, relative to the revenue, that was one of the first things that I personally looked at, because to me, you know, being an accountant by trade and coming from actually DAGS, where we were doing the CAFR and the financial reporting, I was very concerned about that because I'd heard a lot of horror stories about the tax system. And I went through and I looked at how the revenue and how everything flows. I have to say, as bad as the system is, the revenue is accurately being reflected. I mean, there may be some minor things I'm not aware of, but it actually is very comprehensive, and it's a very, very comprehensive process that's being, you know, how it's being handled and how it ultimately gets reported out. The cash is the cash. That goes to Treasury, so we have nothing to do with that. Having said what you said, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, we can only part of the reason why in rollout 2 we got general excise versus individual, which I understand,
That's our
is
biggest
because
dollar.
of the county surcharge. We would not be able to. We can't tell people, oh, gee, counties, you can't charge because we can't deal with accommodate you. So we had to put that first. And of course, GE tax is $3 billion, so it seemed like another good reason. But that's part of the reason why that's rollout 2. Withholding is in rollout 3, and that's really critical because I can't talk too much about what our challenges are, or when I say I can't talk about them, just from a standpoint of since this is a public hearing. But there are major issues with how we're collecting that withholding information, and to me, that's a very, very important piece of the rollout. And then it just comes that rollout 4 is the individual. I understand. I mean, I wish we could do them all up front, but we can't, and we had to prioritize, and there was a good reason why each of these was in the order it's in. I understand. I totally do.
Okay, so, Chair, if I may, aligning with this, when you're talking about your layering of our whole complex system, it has been alluded to here, and it has been stated in previous, hearings. $500 million is outstanding to the state, and it could be as high as $1 billion. We haven't even made any attempts to collect that outside of going after big boxes out of state for their GE. I totally understand that. On our current books, we have no, what do you call forgiveness? We can collect forever. So we have a lot of money outstanding out there. And as these systems come online, I haven't heard you once say in your whole presentation here that we're going to start standing up those, going and collecting those 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years ago. Now that we're getting this data, are we going to collect those old taxes if they're still payers here in the state of Hawaii? Cross-checking that with the Internal Revenue Service. I haven't heard you, are you going to cross-check with other states to find these individuals so we can collect these back taxes? Because we don't have no statute of limitations currently in our statute. And I believe that hasn't been a major priority of our department because we can't substantiate if they do or don't owe us that money.
But that actually, even though I didn't say it in this presentation, is something that I meet with staff about almost daily. I'm not joking. And just recently, we're actually, because we're talking about data cleansing, okay? And we want to have we know the information, some of it that's going to come over may not be that great, but we want to have as good information as we can when we get it into the new system. So we've actually just, as I'm talking to different areas, I've authorized, for people to, if they need to put in, we're reviewing it very carefully, but over time for people to clean up these balances because they have to be, we need to get these cleaned up, okay? We have balances from collections that exceed 10 years. Okay, we got to get this stuff done. We're also looking, Deputy Director is looking at other sources and resources for, identifying and finding people on the mainland that we've been unable to locate using other, third-party, kind of things. We're looking at a collection agency. We have an RFP that's about to go out on that, too. So those are not things that I really felt were germane to a TSM discussion, but these are all things we're doing behind the scenes every day, and I'm not kidding. Every single day we're having meetings about this. The joke in the office is, how many meetings do I have in one day? Because we're just trying to get as much stuff cleaned up as we can. We want this to be as clean a system as it can be. There's still going to be junk that's going to go over, but we'll do as much as we can to clean it up.
So when the vendor said that, or you as well stated, our current data system, is it going to be readable when this new system starts getting set up? Are we going to be able to just transfer it over with technology, or are you going to be entering it through?
No, we're going to try to do a data cleansing and use a tool to migrate the data. But before we do that, we'll make sure there's no garbage in, garbage out. We'll make sure clean up the data. That's why we have some position that was offered by the ledge. So the 6th position, part of the people are going to do a data cleansing, so we can be assured the data is clean before we transfer over the new one. And the other thing I want to answer your question about, for collection side, actually in rollout 2, there's a discovery and data warehouse. That is a component we try to provide a tool to be able to integrate multiple state and federal data inside so we can do a better data analytics to help collections. And then also the other question you mentioned about ME filing. Actually, currently, the ME filing are run by the private vendors. So every year, they are paying $100,000 for that service. But we try to be self-sufficient. So We looking into by the end of this year, we have that one to be total self-sufficient, so we don't have to pay the money. Department of Taxation, the state can save the money for some other purpose instead of paying. Oh, 100-some thousand, about 100, But this one, the dollar amount will keep growing. The ME filing will roll out first roll out for income tax, but you got to gradually add more tax type. So eventually, by the end of the TSM program in July 2019, we'll focus more on web portal, web services. So at that time, we coordinate with the administration and legislature. We can educate the citizen and the business owner. We're going to move forward electronic. Because right now, Department of Taxation only about 40% e-filing. But our goal is by the end of this TSM, we can promote through legislature support, administration support, we educate the general public. We're going to go electronic filing. Yeah, I think another senator and representative, you're right. We don't need that much scanning. We're looking at this, we're going to reach at least move up from 40% up to 80% or more e-filing. Eventually, the need for the scanner will become, smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's our goal. But it's not overnight process. It takes time because we do have production. We got to make sure there's no downtime of production while we try to migrate. Yeah. So, thank you.
Could we possibly have maybe your information on how you're going to scale up employees or scale back employees as this system gets implemented over the 4 years? I really don't want to wait for the 4 years. We're going to start educating people to start doing these things now simultaneously. This is how it should be built. And when you're talking about doing your planning and who's on your team, have you integrated with practitioners in this state? Because those practitioners can really tell you what's wrong with your system outside of your staff.
Right.
I haven't heard you say that you've been interacting with practitioners at all.
Again, it's not really, I didn't say it simply because, there's a lot of things that we do behind the scenes that I didn't talk about here, but, believe me, we talk to a lot of practitioners. We get a lot of phone calls. We have a lot of meetings. And, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and we do have the workshops that we're actually about to have very shortly with all the practitioners, not only here in Oahu. I think we have 4 large ones that we also have on each island.
You still have your practitioner working group?
I'm not sure. That doesn't, but I know the practitioners attend all of these meetings. But like I said, I have lots of, comments and calls and, and hear from a lot of the practitioners. Right. So, we are aware of, of a lot of that that's going. Is it everybody? Is it all inclusive? I can't tell you.
No.
That's the reason why we do have those kind of workshops.
Well, I think maybe in the future you could be more inclusive of adding that information in your presentation, so I can be a lot more comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, and it's we didn't want to have this like a dog and pony show. We felt you just wanted to see the facts of this implement this particular software implementation, but there are a lot of things we're doing that we just sat quietly doing, but we need to do them. We realize that.
And those are the things that I would really like to hear.
Okay.
Because those are the questions that our constituents are having.
All right.
Not only about processing my payment or how long it's taking for my refund. I hear from practitioners at the same thing. Why aren't we hearing that in? And as we start to move forward with budget, we're going to have to hear how many staff are you short?
Sure.
How many staff are you going to have to need for this new implementation? Where we're going with this data.
Yeah.
Are we going to use third-party data washers? Are we going to keep it all in-house? Because I'd be fearful if you really had to say what's going on with bill tax to our public. It would be scary.
Yeah. Well, actually, we want to be as transparent as possible, and I have no problem saying anything about any area, to be honest with you, unless it has something to do with security and some of the things we have to do when we identify fraud. I have absolutely no problem. If somebody asks me a question, I'll say it in public. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Right now, the way we identify fraud is somebody that's been processing a long time, and they, hey, this looks funny, and they send it to you.
No.
So it kind of...
That's not really accurate. Bottom line is, from a fraud standpoint, it goes through. We have filters that are in place.
Oh, yeah.
And then once the filters are basically identified, then it goes to different areas. But it's an ad hoc area. I mean, it's ad hoc staff. But that's what we have to do. We're forced to do that. We have no people that right now that are designated for fraud. That's something we have to look at going forward. And we are looking at that, making some modifications and reorgs to the department. We have to. Unfortunately, fraud is a thing is not going away anytime soon.
They get smarter.
They do. They have all year to think about how they can defraud us. We just are being reactive. We need to be proactive. So, we realize that. Trust me, we really do. But they've got all year. We're working. We're doing other things. But we realize we have to be much more aggressive on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Fennell.
Okay, Rep. Cullen, followed by Senator Rubio.
Good afternoon. It was morning. Just a real quick follow-up regarding one of the big investments, and we've been hearing it, is the hardware. And, when we took the finance site visit to look at the process and how inefficient it is, and we've been hearing efficient, for our constituents, most people, how they relate to it is hardware is what they can see, this right here.
Sure.
You mentioned that our hardware is 60 years old, our scanners.
Oh, no, it's 60s.
Since the 60s.
Technology.
Right.
From what we're told.
Yeah, so, close. Right.
Yeah, I guess so.
It is, right? 60 years old. Okay. Oh, you're making me scared. You're handing accounting and then
I know, I didn't have my editing machine with me.
It's kind of... Okay, so now what is the... So the...
I was just testing you.
No. I was testing you. But what is the how can we go, and we tell our constituents how inefficient or how outdated our system is, especially after the site visit. Regarding the hardware, you come in with this short-term strategy, scanners, and with most people in our district, some of them going to accountants, and most people using, I don't want to make a plug here, but they use TurboTax, right? And they do the file, and it's so simple, and then where's my check, right? Or when is it going to get deposited? And then when we explain to them, this is our process, and they're like, okay. And then some of them, opt to pay the fee to file electronically. How do we know that when you guys go through this TSM, that the hardware we're investing in is going to be adequate and not just getting us to where we need to be right now, but for future sense? Because my phone, iPhone 6 Plus, it's, they're talking about new versions already. So how is the hardware going to be capable for updates moving forward? Because I don't think, when I read this, let me get back to my notes. The Fast Enterprise, you do the software update. Am I, Mr.?
But
right?
they also do they're integrating, it's a fully integrated solution. Maybe have James talk.
Well, so my bottom line of the question is, how do we know that because you're saying scanners, and Chair Luke was asking about how do we integrate e-filing, because there's people definitely watching on Lelos, okay, we want to band-aid the situation so we can handle our current tax season, but how do we get to the e-filing, the GE filing all electronically, and make sure we can get to that system? And when they see stuff in the private sector, when we have TurboTax, look, I have all the new laws that we put in, and I just type in this number, that number, and then why can't the state do that? So I'm just giving you right.
Yeah, James, if you could just address the fact about the hardware and how it's an integrated solution. That's actually something you decided on.
Yeah, in this procurement, the RFP did ask for vendors to propose and actually procure and provide hardware. I put it in two categories. There's the scanners and some other small pieces that support IVR, and then there's all the hardware that supports the new tax system. And so that's, when we talk about hardware, it's all of that together. You're right. I mean, this hardware doesn't last forever. We're very comfortable for the duration of this contract, for the prices we've put. We are going to be good with hardware. I mean, that's essentially what we have signed up for.
Because it's a $5 million investment right off the top, so which we need, though. We really need to.
Yeah, it's something that's basically what we signed up for. We were asked to commit that this will be all the hardware we need for the duration of this contract.
Okay, now when you say duration of the contract, I'm looking at 4 years, and after 4 years, did the hardware become obsolete, or?
Well, it's actually 5 years.
Okay.
So there's kind of a warranty.
Give or take a year.
On all of it. There's kind of two sides to that. On the scanner side, it's my hope that, from a marketing perspective and maybe even from a legislative perspective, we're nudging and pushing people toward e-file and e-pay, and we'll find that these scanners will actually serve us fairly well beyond the 5 years, and they'll just be used less and less, hopefully. As far as the server hardware, it can continue to run, but your point is very valid that these pieces of hardware do become quickly outdated, and what you run into with hardware is not that it will stop working or be inadequate, but that the hardware vendors themselves, there's kind of a horizon on how long they warranty and support those things, and they do eventually say, at this point, if you want to keep using it, you can, but if it breaks, we're not going to have that part anymore. And
Okay, that's great. Now, this brings me to the next part that I was going to get to, was the 30, hopefully this, right now we have 30 million, but then this almost 60 million, a little under $60 million movement towards an updated system. Within the contract, or within, and maybe our lifetime being in our current positions, all of us here, what is the talk about a maintenance plan moving forward, or an updating plan moving forward? Do we do this every 5 years so we're not hit with a $60 million price tag right off the bat? Is that within your tax modernization plan? Because on the state side, we like to build these nice new things, and then after several years, we can't pay for it. So I want to make sure that we can hear and put everything on the table as it moves forward. So,
And we do have post-warranty maintenance and support. I don't know if, James, if you want to address that.
Okay, well, I'm going to give an example. When we first got elected here, the Judiciary Building out in Kapolei had put in security systems to operate their computers, and this was in the DH side of it. And now it's outdated, and they came in to ask for money to be replaced. So, but then the Judiciary didn't have a plan to say how we're going to continue to maintain the system, or if not, replace them with newer systems. So I think that needs to be discussed up front, and so that's why I'm just trying to say, if it's in your modernization plan, we should see some of that.
That's true.
Yeah. I'm not sure what page this is, but the milestone payment schedule shows some, close to the bottom you see maintenance through warranty, performance bond. That's essentially an annual support and maintenance for the first 5 years. And then there's another 5 years post-warranty maintenance and support. And you can see it's running through 2025. So there is a certain amount of maintenance and support already built into this contract for essentially close to 10 years. You do bring up an excellent point, and it is kind of why we essentially started the company we started and went down the path we did go down. We had been involved with some tax system modernizations where an agency had spent 7 years, and at the end of the 7 years, they got a new system, but it was already 7 years old. And we very much, our whole reason for existing is to change that model. When this project ends, at the end of that 5 years, this agency will actually be running our newest version of software at that time. With each rollout, we build in an update process to make sure that the latest components of our software coming out of our development center are always incorporated.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, because I did see that in here. So we can, after, let's say if it's fully funded, system is modernized, we would have a maintenance plan and operating this new system as of, as you mentioned, 2025 then. if it goes as planned as your milestone, right? Okay. Okay. Good. Good to see, but then this is not fully funded yet.
No.
Yeah, okay. So I just got to ensure that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Regarding the performance bond, the $7.7 million performance bond, that, if I understand that correctly, that's an assurance that the project will be completed. So if things don't go as according to plan and things unravel or not delivered, when do we know, or what is the definition of the threshold when that claim is exerted? In other words, how does the state take advantage of this bond that has been placed? When do we know we're there, and how does that play?
I'm going to plead ignorance on this. I really don't know, but James, you have something.
I think the way, I think, and I'm not an expert in it, is the way it generally works is as claims come up, for example, the state feels it's suffered some direct damages, then they can access parts of that bond. So they'll say the damages here are $1 million, and they'll, at that time, access $1 million of the bond.
So if the agreement was to do a rollout, a phase, or 2 or 3, let's say we get 2 or 3 years down the road and the first rollout hasn't been done, or the second one, or hasn't been done satisfactorily, who's the arbiter of, hey, you haven't done what you said you're going to do, we want the bond now? Or does that, see, how do we, how does that
you
get
bring up
triggered?
a very good point. And you know, from my understanding, when other companies have been through this, it essentially does usually end up as a legal proceeding in front of a judge or something. Is my, we don't have any direct experience in this ourselves.
Right.
But
Hopefully you never would.
Hopefully. But yeah, I think that's what generally
Just
happens.
clear, just curious if in the contract, or if it were clear, not to belabor the point, but I just curious if, because I don't think we ever actually take advantage of these when contracts aren't met. So I was just wondering if there was a way to build that in so it was clear.
To be honest, Senator, this is pretty typical for state contracts. They've asked for a bond, and it's the state can draw upon it if it feels there's damages. The reason we ask for it to be removed is because we know there's very little instances of it ever actually providing any real relief. So from our perspective, it's an extra cost that we pass along to the state that really doesn't, historically, there's not a lot of evidence that it actually provides much protection.
And the last point, Chair, whenever sometimes you come up against this and you say, well, you haven't performed, they say, yeah, but we're still working on it. And that seems to be always the get out of jail issue, is that, well, we're working on it. We haven't given up yet. So I was just curious if how ironclad the deadlines are and the performance levels in that. So I just offer that as a question regarding the certainty of the contract. That's more of a statement.
Yeah, that's why exactly. That's why we need a very good, solid project management plan. We make sure we assure the acceptance from the user side, and hierarchically go up to the high administration so they can sign off the contract and make a payment. So we want to make sure that mechanism is there, methodology is there.
Let's hope it is. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is a little bit follow up on Representative Collins' question, line of questioning, as far as the life of the system and having to reinvest in that in the future. I noticed your client list had some small states and some big states, So New York, Washington, North Dakota. New York being maybe 14 times our population, Washington being 5 times, and then North Dakota being, maybe half, right?
Smaller, yeah.
Okay, so, and I would think a system, maybe it's not apples and apples, but, the cost to put in a system per resident, there's some efficiencies of scale, I would think. Has your company ever looked at, the smaller states being disadvantaged of having to keep up with modernizing it, and the cost of doing that versus a big state, which actually has a tax base to be able to do that a little more often?
Yeah. I have to apologize to Representative Cullen. I was not completely clear. So through the 5 years, it is complete keeping up to date with the latest software. The way the RFP was structured, it asked for pricing for another 5 years, years 6 through 10, for essentially maintenance and support, but not actually new versions. So this was a price to keep it running smoothly for another 5 years. It's essentially a continued warranty with on-site people to keep it working properly for the state, so there's no issues. But not many vendors offer the other, and so most RFPs don't request it. So for apples and apples, there would actually be an additional cost for the actual renovating. What we can say with confidence is those are upgrades, which are an incremental of 60. They're nowhere near a 60 cost. So you can be in a position where after 10 years, you have a system that's brand new at that point for a small fraction of what it would have been to do a whole new system at that point. But it's not accurate to say that this was that level for a full 10 years. It was a reduced level in the second 5 years. So apologize. So there are actually you mentioned North Dakota. Our kind of lead client in North Dakota always said we have to do everything states do. We have all the complexity, just not the same volume. And so you do have a little bit of a kind of extra burden as a smaller state because, from a return perspective, your returns are not that much simpler than New York's. They're actually could be as complicated. They can even be more complex. And that is really a function of, implementing these systems. If Idaho, as an example, only has about 15 total tax types, so you have your list of taxes there. It is a much shorter list in Idaho. That does translate to some simplicity and some ease when it comes to implementing. That's really what can drive it more than the volumes. The volumes are a factor, but pricing, volumes play into it, but really the number of taxes, the complexity of those taxes, your GE is a bit more complicated than a state's sales tax. That contributes to price. Certainly, our model is we're going to be here, living here, working side by side with the agency. So the cost of living in North Dakota versus Hawaii is pretty different, and that does play into the pricing for sure. Unfortunately, prices don't scale down with population as much as you might like them to.
They don't scale.
They don't, yeah. If it's X dollars for a state of 10 million, it's not going to be 1/10 of that for a state of 1 million. Because of all these other factors, it could end up being fairly similar. Overall, states do pay a little less. Our contract actually with Massachusetts is a similar 10-year time frame, and it's closer to $100 million. It's a $90 million contract. Boston's a very expensive city, just like Honolulu. One of the big differences probably there, the complexity is similar. It's simply they're bigger. And so there the size was, but it wasn't 5 times more expensive. It was, 50% more expensive. So as American states, we have pretty complex things we're doing, whether we're big or small.
Well, what I'm looking for is there some kind of analysis as far as, and I know that every state has a different menu of items, but we have 1.4 million people. Your system is going to be what, 60 million, so that's what, $40-something per person. Have you made that kind of comparisons, and then the reasons why some states cost more and some states cost less per or whatever, and then from there strategies to take to make it affordable for smaller states to be able to modernize in a timely manner, and again, we don't have the tax base to keep up. And this is not only for tax. This is for ERP, all the different things that OMIT is trying to do, and I'm just wondering, we're going to be doing these other investments in IT, and are there strategies that your company has looked at to help the smaller states?
Good question. I guess I'd say not yet. We've this system, GenTax, we have looked at it, in a couple situations, Colorado being one, where the cities are all basically running a sales tax, which is very similar from city to city. It's all under state law. They have to basically do everything the same. And we are looking at, is there some kind of model where they can actually have a shared cloud solution for tax administration? But when we start thinking about, is that ever going to be possible at the state level? So far, with the 20-something states we've been working with, there isn't a single law that every state needs to follow. In fact, the differences are fairly significant. So this idea of a kind of a cloud shared solution where you're going to now have to change all your penalty and interest rules, all your line items, all your offsets, everything, and they have to be the same as the next state, it just doesn't seem practical, and I don't see that ever happening. What we do, what's allowed us to be successful is we entered a market where, and I think you can, with your previous experience, even in this state, the going price for these systems was double or more than what we're charging. So it's true we're charging a lot. It's true on a per taxpayer basis it's a high amount, but we're doing well because we're charging way less than what seems like the other alternatives are at this point in time. I mean, it wasn't, there's states that have spent $180 million on a new tax system, and so that is a thing of the past now, but that was happening back in the kind of early 2000s, late 90s. We're proud of the fact that we've essentially changed that the vendors can't get away with charging $180 million anymore, because we're going to be there saying we'll do it for half that. But it's still very expensive. You're right. What we can do, what we do with confidence, is we're going to make this system pay for itself. Tax departments are lucky in that they bring money in, and we can help them bring more money in, and we can help show that as expensive as the system is, it is absolutely going to pay for itself plus some, and it will continue to do that on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just a question regarding potential preparations for unforeseen glitches or things of that nature. Can you explain to me what's our plan regarding maybe the incompatibility of our antiquated system with our new modern system? Can you sort of walk me through that?
I'm looking forward to being pleasantly surprised, but at this point, based on the 20-something states we've worked at, we absolutely expect many glitches in many ways, shapes, and form. It can be people-type glitches where people are, somebody we really relied upon for data cleansing gets a new job. They leave the agency, and now we're in this interesting position of, okay, how do we move forward from here? System glitches are a reality. Network glitches are a reality. When we commit to the time frames, we have a certain tolerance already built in. We get pretty nervous about trying to expedite or change that timeline. And that's because we just know things are not going to go smoothly. These are large, complex projects, and there's going to be a lot of potholes along the way. And having done this enough times a year per rollout is pretty good. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be stressful, but it has enough slack built into it to deal with the many issues we will absolutely have, because it's just not realistic to think Hawaii will be the first state to not have a whole bunch of issues. Every state, these are just large, complex, old systems. Issues will happen.
Okay. I'm specifically sort of talking about like widespread glitches. We do expect there to be some growing pains, definitely. But we want to make sure that on the end user, our constituents, the citizens of Hawaii, we want to make sure that if they're promised something, that they get it delivered on time. So maybe if you folks could continue to share sort of your plans and your, whatever your damage control plans are, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the main, issue that, things here we feel confident is we are not trying to do a traditional way of implementation. We actually try to find a proven record of a cost solution system. So it's truly integrated. So a lot of glitches come out because incompatibility. You have corporation A provide some portion of component, B from different component, but they both working fine individually. But when you integrate it, you get trouble. Yeah. And that's why we're looking for a true integrated cost solutions. So probably we would say maybe around 80% with the cost system. Another maybe around 20%, maybe it's unique only for based on Hawaii statute, unique for our state. And that's why we try to fine tune it in that part. Yeah. So the success of this project compared to traditional way, try to do everything pieces, is a lot higher than traditional way, and that's why we will try to do it very carefully and make sure we watch, every rollout, make sure it's successful, because vendors are still on site. If we find a glitches on rollout 1, immediately we can try to fix the problem, not wait until 4 years after. So it's kind of agile type of methodologies. We found a problem. Yes, there's nothing we perfect, but keep improving it, and that's why we reduce the risk for that. Thank you.
Would you like to comment on that as well?
No, I think Robert's pretty much covered, what I think is, the issues and how we would resolve them. So I think, I feel very comfortable because we've selected a commercial off-the-shelf system that, has 22 other, states that have successfully done it. So, I'm just in a simplistic way, I'll say that, I feel pretty good about it. I'm more concerned about, when we're trying to take stuff from our old system put it in the new system. That's what I'm nervous about, to be honest with you. I'm less nervous about the new system, to be honest.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Onishi.
But it's still very expensive. You're right. What we can do, what we do with confidence, is we're going to make this system pay for itself. Tax departments are lucky in that they bring money in, and we can help them bring more money in, and we can help show that as expensive as the system is, it is absolutely going to pay for itself plus some, and it will continue to do that on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Just a question regarding potential preparations for unforeseen glitches or things of that nature. Can you explain to me what's our plan regarding maybe the incompatibility of our antiquated system with our new modern system? Can you sort of walk me through that?
I'm looking forward to being pleasantly surprised, but at this point, based on the 20-something states we've worked at, we absolutely expect many glitches in many ways, shapes, and form. It can be people-type glitches where people are, somebody we really relied upon for data cleansing gets a new job. They leave the agency, and now we're in this interesting position of, okay, how do we move forward from here? System glitches are a reality. Network glitches are a reality. When we commit to the time frames, we have a certain tolerance already built in. We get pretty nervous about trying to expedite or change that timeline. And that's because we just know things are not going to go smoothly. These are large, complex projects, and there's going to be a lot of potholes along the way. And having done this enough times, a year per rollout is pretty good. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be stressful, but it has enough slack built into it to deal with the many issues we will absolutely have, because it's just not realistic to think Hawaii will be the first state to not have a whole bunch of issues. every state, these are just large, complex, old systems. Issues will happen.
Okay. I'm specifically sort of talking about maybe like widespread glitches. We do expect there to be some growing pains, definitely. But we want to make sure that on the end user, our constituents, the citizens of Hawaii, we want to make sure that if they're promised something, that they get it delivered on time. So maybe if you folks could continue to share sort of your plans and your, whatever your damage control plans are, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the main, issue that, things here we feel confident is we are not trying to do a traditional way of implementation. We actually try to find a proven record of a cost solution system. So it's truly integrated. So a lot of glitches come out because incompatibility. You have corporation A provide some portion of component, B from different component, but they both working fine individually. But when you integrate it, you have trouble. Yeah. And that's why we're looking for a true integrated cost solutions. So probably we would say maybe around 80% with the cost system. Another maybe around 20%, maybe it's unique only for based on how I state you, unique for our state. And that's why we try to fine tune in that part. Yeah. So the success of this project compared to traditional way, try to do everything pieces, is a lot higher than traditional way, and that's why we will try to do it very carefully and make sure we watch, every rollout, make sure it's successful because vendor is still on site. If we find a glitches on rollout 1, immediately we can try to fix the problem, not wait until 4 years after. So it's kind of agile type of methodologies. We found a problem. Yes, there's nothing will be perfect, but keep improving it, and that's why we reduce the risk for that. Thank you.
Would you like to comment on that as well?
No, I think Robert's pretty much covered, what I think is, the issues and how we would, how we would resolve them. So I think, I feel very comfortable because we've selected a commercial off-the-shelf system that, has 22 other, states that have successfully done it. So, I'm just in a simplistic way, I say that, I feel pretty good about it. I'm more concerned about, when we're trying to take stuff from our old system put it in the new system. That's where I'm nervous about, to be honest with you. I'm less nervous about the new system, to be honest.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Onishi.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions for the vendor. In regards to staffing on this project, how much staffing are you proposing for the implementation of this project?
So for the full-time FAST folks, the FAST Enterprises folks who will be living, working full-time, we expect that number to reach about 25 here in Honolulu. We do, there's some other stuff that happens around that also. We'll often be going back to our headquarters in Denver for help with this, that, and the other thing, and there'll be somebody doing a couple days work for us from there if it's product related, and we'll have people like myself and other people who will come in and kind of do health checks. And in my case, I look at the overall status. We'll have experts in a particular area. We have a gentleman who has a lot of expertise in collection and audit, and he'll come in and be making recommendations to the agency about, should we be more aggressive about liens? Should we be looking at seizing bank accounts? And we're not going to tell you you should do it, but we're going to offer these suggestions of what other states do. So there's a lot of other people kind of coming in here and there, but the full-time team will be about 25 folks.
On island?
On island.
In the state of
living and
Hawaii.
working here.
Okay. And you expect them to be here the entire 4-year period?
Some will definitely. We will have a little bit of turnover throughout that. The 25 people, at year 1 may not be the exact same 25 people at year 4.
Right.
You do end up with some, people quit, people, sometimes there is the Hawaii, of course I want to go. And then the reality of being here, I miss my home.
It's so expensive. Pay me more.
It's too far.
So moving forward with the maintenance portion of the system, is there any full-time on-island staff that's going to be assigned to Hawaii?
So definitely through the 5-year, through the warranty. And then also this additional 5-year pricing does include a couple of full-time people to resolve issues that may come up, bugs that may come up, to keep everything running smoothly. It will be a very small number, but it will continue to be a full-time on-site presence during those additional years 6 through 10.
Okay, but so 1 through 5 on the warranty, about how many staff are you projecting?
We may kind of run 25 right up until the rollout, the final rollout, the 5th rollout at the end of 4 years. And then as we go into the warranty, that's where I would see a tapering off. Little by little, that number will come down to by
5 years, couple people. Permanent.
Couple people that will then be there years 6 through 10.
Okay, that makes sense to me. How many projects of the magnitude in terms of what is being requested, the scope of the entire project, not the population or the number of users or stuff, but in terms of the magnitude of the project, the applications needed, the modules needed, the where we're starting from in terms of the state of Hawaii, in terms of our antiquated system, which are replacing pretty much. How many projects of similar magnitude have you guys actually worked on out of the 22?
I would say most, probably not all. I mentioned that Idaho was not the similar magnitude. It was, but we, quite a few states, when you look at the taxes they administer, there are some that it's bigger. I mean, Montana, we're up to 80-something tax types that we've implemented because there's so many little taxes. Instead of a sales tax, they have separate taxes on everything under the sun. The one thing that is different here, well, there's differences. We don't always provide the office space. This contract, that kind of inflated the price a little bit. We are actually providing the office space. Normally, the state will provide that.
Right.
So another one, though, is those scanners we've been talking about. It's not that common. I won't say it's never happened, but it's rare for that to be bundled into this kind of tax modernization. So there are a couple things extra here that make this unique, and you could say bigger magnitude. But there's probably a couple things that the number of taxes, for example, is not particularly high here. It's kind of in the middle. It's average. So that balances out a little bit maybe that way. I'd say most of those 20, it's 23 now. Hawaii is our 23rd state. So the other 22, good 16 or 17 of them are similar magnitude.
Okay, if I may, a couple questions for DOTAX, Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay, for DOTAX, who prepared the requirements in your RFP for system integration to other departments and agencies?
Well, back to 2011, the Department of Taxation formed a task force group, so that including every divisions and branches office, all the subject matter experts come in and contribute their own areas, requirements, and then we integrate it together in past, probably from 2011, the whole year we do it all requirements. And then we start in 2012 for RFI for the vendors to come out to propose what kind of technology available out there in the market. And after that, we revisit the requirement, update it. In 2014, before RFP release, we actually had the whole department walk through all requirements to validate every requirement is that meet what they need. Yeah. So it's department-wise, everybody participate from their own areas so they can represent, their area's needs.
So your familiarity with the RFP.
Yeah.
So say, for example, at DCCA, when DCCA registers a new business, is that information going to be automatically funneled to DOTAX or
We-
flagged for DOTAX to consider as part of, potential income?
Yeah, we actually create this as a channel ready to accept all external information, so we can do comparison and incorporate with other departments. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another example is when departments or agencies require tax clearance. So are you guys having that interface to not only the state departments and agencies, but also the counties to provide that interconnectivity or that integration with their systems?
Well, actually, right now, still already we have that online. Yeah, the SGE, the Hawaii Compliance Express, through online, they can quickly get compliance clearance. Yeah. So DCCA, Department of Taxation, and neighbors. I think.
Yeah, but it's not interconnectivity with the department, right? It's the person who needs the tax clearance has to go to your website to secure it, and then they get sent to them, and then they gotta then take it back to whoever's requesting it. To me, true interconnectivity would be that at that time when a person's applying, right, they are able to trigger a request to DOTAX for that on behalf of that person, and DOTAX sends them the clearance on or the information as to whether or not they have tax clearance or not. To me, that's true integration.
Yeah, actually.
So, I mean, those are the kinds of concerns that I have in terms of who did you talk to at the department to give you the needs of the department? I mean, was it the director? Was it the clerk? Was it the division head? Because, again, my experience is some of the people that are in leadership positions don't fully understand computerization and capability. And they're not necessarily on the front line addressing the issues that come up in terms of either data collection or data availability. So I'm just wondering who you guys depended upon to get that information, because a lot of times when we ask other departments and agencies for information, whether it's, how much they receive or whatever the information, a lot of times they say, well, we cannot get that information. So
you're bringing up, it's an excellent question, example, an area. In general, what we want to do in the next 4 years is really help the agency in terms of automating rote things that can be automated. And so you do look for opportunities such as the one you mentioned. One of the ones we've done recently that's been great, and 10 years ago this wasn't available, but there's now this thing called EBN, electronic bankruptcy notification. Bankruptcy used to be very manually intensive for tax departments. Now there's a way of electronically, nationally finding out anyone who's declared bankruptcy and starting the process in Gentax of what needs to be done when someone does declare bankruptcy. If your one we'll look at and want to do, for example, is electronic offset. So if someone owes money to another agency, maybe we shouldn't give them their refund. Maybe that money should be offset, and vice versa. If it's a vendor doing business with the state but they owe tax, what generally happens is we're pretty willing and keen and able to do most of those, and the ones that do and don't get done, unfortunately, quite often comes down to the business partner, the other agency. They don't have a large project with a budget and able to just do these things. So while we'll be able to do them, the ones we do end up getting constrained by that other agency and their ability to do that. So I'm sure we'll be able to do some, but I'm sure those others will be saying, would have been nice to do this, but we can't get the other agency to do it in any kind of time frame that, in these 4 years.
I have another question for the.
Rep, if I may, just to kind of add to your question or add to your answer, James. We actually, Deputy Director Kim has actually been working with some of the other departments. We realize that there's information that we need to work together and to share information. DCCA, DLIR, those are two just I know that he's been talking to. And one of the problems that we have with our current system is that if we wanted to share anything we have right now, the way the screen is such, I'm saying the screen, but the information that we would want to share, some of it is confidential and we can't share it with them. But the point is the new system, and that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at with the new system, is to have the ability to share information that is not necessarily confidential with another agency, where we don't break those confidentiality issues. So we do realize there would be a lot of efficiencies that would be gained. And as I say, Deputy Director is actually working right now with them. And actually the departments are very receptive to that. In some cases they're able to give us more information right now than we can give to them. But we realize there's strengths there and there's efficiencies that we can gain. But so that is something I just wanted to mention to you.
I have a follow-up question in regards to that research that you folks did with the departments on the interconnectivity and sharing of data. So who is responsible for looking at our laws that may be hindrances in the ability to share data or provide data or interconnect with departments and agencies?
Well, we work with our AG in that, with regard to that, to see what we can do, what we can share, what we can't share.
Okay, so was anything discovered that needs to be addressed by the legislature in terms of?
I mean, not at this point. I mean, I think what we're going to try to do with the new system is just have it so that, those things that information that's confidential is just not passed on to another department. There's certain things that are proprietary that only tax department can have access to. So, no, I think it's kind of clear, cut and dry. I don't say cut and dry, but I think we know where the confidentiality issues are. But if we have any questions, certainly our AG is the resource for that.
Okay. And one final question for me, for the vendor. Mm-hmm. What percentage of your software was proposed to be modified in terms of the scope of work?
Another good question, Representative. So the model we use, the software that we license to the states, and it is to the states. It's really the same software. We just started a project actually at the same time in July for the state of Washington. So in both cases, we're delivering the exact same software to both agencies. And in both cases, we're not actually delivering source code. We're delivering working software that runs. And there's only, across all our states and all our countries and cities and everybody, there's really only one Gentax, and it's maintained in Denver. And when it's enhanced or changed or fixed, that's sent then to all the customers at once. So technically, we won't ever change our software for the state of Hawaii. Now, to get the system working for the state of Hawaii, there's two primary activities. The biggest one, the one that we want to do, is what we call configuration, where we have lots of, just think of them as tables with parameters. And that's where we control the behavior of the software. So we say, here are the returns, here are the line items on each return, here are the rules for all those line items. That's all done in tables of rules that are outside of any software. So there's a lot of setting up these parameters, but there's no touching of the Gentax license software. In some cases, and there are some where the unique requirements of a state are complex, we will do extra code outside of our software that will run kind of alongside our software, and we have very strict rules to doing that to make upgrades and things not become, a mess, let's just say. So as long as we adhere to those rules, we should be able to do an upgrade with minimal impact on any additional programming that was done that's unique to the state. But that additional programming is done here by the project on the ground here in Hawaii. That software source code will reside with the agency, and the agency is free to maintain that on a going forward basis or to get us to help them to maintain it. And as long as they follow those rules, it should, it's never completely free and easy, but upgrades should be manageable.
So what's the percentage from your original package that requires either forms of changes, whether it is customized modules to be able to function in the state of Hawaii, or the amount of maybe changes to these tables that would require additional fields for customization of the software?
So a very high percentage of the system will be able to be delivered with just our software and those configuration tables. But as far as can things be done without any configuration, like you don't even have to do the parameters? Not really. Almost everything, just even things like a name. There's these. We have these configurable name types. There's a DBA, a legal name, an individual name when it's a person, and so an agency can add to the name types. You can have business types, et cetera. It goes on and on and on. So very little can be done without some need for some configuration, but almost everything can be done just with the configuration. It's a kind of a 5 to 10 to 15% actually require where you actually require extra programming. It's usually pretty small.
So in your proposal, 10 to 15% of the costs is based on that type of work?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it might even be a little less if you look at just the programming, because a lot of, there's a lot of work in these projects. We spend a fair amount of time talking to the agency about how they do business today and how they might want to do it differently tomorrow, and change processes, and that's stuff that is, it's fairly, you don't just have an hour meeting. You talk about some of these things for weeks on end before you can settle on. There's an impact to people and who they're reporting to and what their titles are, and so you have to carefully sort through all of that. So when you look at the percentage that's really pure programming, it might be less than 5%.
Okay, one final question regarding the software is, in your maintenance agreement, is there a provision put in for hours of maintenance or modifications moving forward? In other words, if the state of Hawaii, say for example, changes a law or institutes a new law that requires our tax system to be changed, is there a provision for a certain bank of hours to be used to accomplish those kinds of things, or is it going to be bill as we go?
I don't think there is a provision right now. And there's a variety of things that are possible, and I would normally counsel an agency this early in the game, to think about the options, but not to make a decision yet. Most agencies' goal, and it's, I think, the agency of this goal, is to be able to do the types of things you've said with the agency's own IT staff. And they will be involved in the project and be learning how these configurations are done so that they can make those kinds of changes in response to legislative things in the future. Not every state accomplishes that to the same degree. We have some states that have had some good success, some states not so much. We had one state that was doing very well with just 3 or 4 IT people who were really getting it, and then within a matter of a few months, every one of them left the agency, and all of a sudden they were completely dependent on us to do everything. So sometimes there's those kinds of things that's out of everybody's control. But we will certainly be, this agency has a stated goal of getting its own IT people, so we'll be working toward that. It's doable. It doesn't necessarily happen right away when we finish the fourth rollout. Sometimes there's a couple more years of learning and working side by side with us till they get to that point. But there's a good number of states that can handle what I call the annual legislative changes, the normal noise, with their own staff. But legislative changes, as we all know, are not all created equal. You could decide to discontinue your G and go to a more traditional sales tax. That will be a big change. You'll be shutting down one tax and starting a new one. You'll probably end up having a mini project with a fair few of our people helping for something that significant.
This might sound a little silly, but how large of a field size is last name in your system?
Oh, geez. I'm trying to remember, because I actually worked on that at one time many moons ago. If it has, a limit at all, it's probably around 1,000 bytes, something like that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because our current system, that's one of the issues that came before us, is the fact that a person's name cannot be entered, their complete name cannot be entered in our tax system.
Yeah, the challenge often is not how large the database can handle, but the screen display. Like,
exactly,
people don't want to see it this wide when it's normally all this.
Right.
But as soon as you say it's this, for the odd person, their name may get truncated, and there's still a way to zoom in on the detail screen and see the whole thing. But
so you're very familiar with Hawaii's spellings.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I'm trying to think of. Because we do work in some countries. Actually, Finland, we've made actually quite a few changes with this latest version, which will be the version we're implementing here for Hawaii. This new version, quite a few fields got wider because Finnish words go on forever. So just simple things like tax and taxpayer and check. Every word is now a sentence almost.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
I have a follow-up question to some of the questions that I think Representative Keo Kalole and others said. It seems like there's a lot of discomfort in the contract because it is a large contract, and we're not sure what the outcomes and whether it's actually doing a good job or not. So, OIMT also mentioned today that the state has a very bad record of any IT contracts over $10 million. So since you folks decided to go ahead and do a contract for $30 million, and in addition to that, may even commit the state to a $60 million at some point in time, just like the connector and all those other things, Kolea and whatever. At some point in time, if we come to find out this system is not working and not compatible and it's failing, what's your contingency?
What's my contingency?
Yeah, what's your contingency plan? Because, I think the earlier testimony was that you folks didn't put any either type of incentives or penalties. So at some point in time, if the milestones are not met or somehow through the process, we come to find out this system is not compatible, it's not working, then what's your contingency?
Well, I really, I think it's a matter of how smoothly it will get rolled out.
But then what's your contingency plan?
Well, the contingency is right now our current system is unstable, so we have to.
But then if this is
we have to make this work.
But then everyone wants to make it work, but at some point in time, you just got to be realistic and say, okay, even if this is going to work, you must think about if it doesn't work, what's the exit plan or what's the contingency plan?
Okay.
Or have you? Is there a plan or is there no plan?
I have 95% confidence that we're.
Okay, we cannot just trust 95% confidence.
Let me continue, please. I have a high confidence that a system that's been successfully implemented for 22 states is going to work for the 23rd. Having said that, realizing that, we don't have, state does not have a good track record of implementing software or whatever. The one thing that we are doing, as we're rolling this out, and Robert knows this, we've been talking about it, is we have interim solutions that we're trying to implement. Now, that doesn't address a very unstable system. We have an unstable system. We never know, just as I said before, we never know. One day he may try to turn that system on and it may not go on. Okay, hopefully that never happens.
Yeah, but
when I say interim,
that's besides of that.
Okay.
So with this contract, we have committed to $30 million.
Right.
If this doesn't work, what's your plan?
Okay, and this is what I'm telling you, is we have interim solutions with when I say interim, I really mean interim, just with the existing system that we have to put other things that we can have so that at least from a standpoint of having the state function and our ability to collect revenue will occur.
So the $30 million, those are additional cost items to keep?
It won't be. These are just additional things that we're looking at how we can do that we can put into place if something should fail or something gets delayed.
With no cost to the state. How does that work?
Well, just with different procedures that we're looking at, as far as getting revenue into the coffers quicker, using different. It may be a very minimal cost, but say looking at lockbox solution or a remote deposit solution, things like that. If suddenly our scanners weren't working properly, again, it's just a Band-Aid. When you say an alternate or a fallback solution or whatever, I mean, this will work. This has to work. We're not going to say, oh, we're going to go out and do another RFP and look for another system. Like I said, if 22 states have implemented it successfully, there's no reason why we can't do it either. I mean, we will have bumps in the road. We know that what we've done thus far was we've accomplished a lot since December. Okay, and we're really proud of that. But the bottom line is we know that that was the easy part. The part we're going to do now is the hard part. We know the next 5 years are going to be very, very difficult. So we're not celebrating by any means, but I really believe, and I know, you said, well, what's the fallback? But the bottom line is, if you have a system that's worked for 22 states, it's going to work for this state. And it's really just a matter of how many bumps we get and how many, black and blues we get along the way. I really am convinced of that. I mean, there have to be, I think we've planned this very, very carefully. It's not something that we've just done like, yeah, this sounds good. I mean, we've been thinking about this and planning this for a very, very long time. Yeah, there may be some bumps, and maybe we get some pushback in some, in some of the completion dates. Not impossible, but the bottom line is I am convinced that this will be a success. Given that 22 states have done it, we should be able to do it too. Robert, you want to say anything?
I was just going to add, it's not a big thing, but there is actually a penalty in there for late delivery. It's
so I guess the question is, can the state, so it's both sides. So whether you feel that the state hasn't complied with some of your demands in making sure that your folks are in place to make sure that this is successful, or on the other hand, the state feels that that you have not complied. Is there something in the contract that allows either party to get out of the contract?
So the one thing the state has that we were very comfortable with is the state can actually terminate for convenience with no cause at all, no need to justify anything at any time. There would be, some debate about hardware we already bought and office leases we already signed. So it's not fair to say it would be complete refund of everything paid, but absolutely at any point, no future obligations at all and no justification needed. If the station's not comfortable, they can terminate at any time.
So maybe on those notes, just real fast, and I think Senator Kim has some questions after that. I know we've been here for a while. Just for some homework to help you keep on those benchmarks that we've been talking about. Some of the things we talked about was the $2 million discrepancy between, and I know you might question whether it was a discrepancy or not, but I know in our conversation, the IV&V was going to come out of the $3 million in our conversations. Now you're saying that IV&V is going to come out of the $2 million surplus you have in the GO bond appropriation. That's going to lapse on June 30th of 2016. So what we would like to see is a breakdown of the time frame in terms of how you're going to execute that contract before that actually lapses. Also, what we would like to see is the $3 million that you have that, as you mentioned earlier, 80% you did lapse back because you did not expend that. What you will be needing to expend then, since you will not be using that for IV&V purposes going forward, since you will then be using the $2 million remainder of the GO bond appropriation, and what you'll be using that for between now and 2021. 2021, it sounds like, then you'll be using it for maintenance purposes. If you could then break down what that 2.1 to 2.3 or $4 million will include in the maintenance costs. We'll include this in a memo to you specifically.
Oh, okay.
But between now and 2021, you're going to have quite a bit of lapse. You should have in that $3 million. You will still have lapse even at that particular point. Because you will not need that much for maintenance. But we need to see specifically what that $3 million will be for. Keep in mind this $3 million is on top of what we provide you for the 18 FTEs in terms of operating costs. So this is not the total cost combined. And then also, and we'll include this in a memo as well, we know a lot of what you're going to need to do your punch list in terms of the deliverables is based on the best and final offer and what DOTAX needs to provide you with. As you mentioned, a lot of your concerns, even you stated, is what the old system will have to put into the new system. Right. And if you take a look at the BAFO, it has quite a bit of things that it requires DOTAX to do, whether it's transfer files over or actually stand up and put together a lot of the hardware applications and the systems. So what we probably like to do, given that it does state clearly here that in order to roll out successfully Part 1 by December 28th, 2015, following requirements are necessary for DOTAX to either provide you with or stand up various parts of the system. We'll want to make sure that you're also on track from the punch list standpoint to make sure that they're able to comply with various parts of the deliverables that you've set forward. So again, a lot of this is just to make sure that from a fidelity standpoint, we are on track. But that also that from a resource capacity, you're doing what you need to do. We've given you the FTEs. Now it's about execution from a contract management standpoint. So I think that's really important as well. So, you know, there's a lot that we've discussed here, but I think if we stay on track on all of those particular points, I'm sure we'll be checking in throughout. You know, we'll see what we can do. But I know Senator Kim had some questions.
I've been watching on and off on TV, and I did want to follow up on Representative Luke's questions as far as payment scheduling. I haven't seen a contract, so is there a payment schedule as to when they would receive certain amount of money?
We do have a payment schedule, a milestone payment schedule, yes.
So at what point do they get paid more than half or at least half?
Let's see.
And perhaps you can provide us with that schedule.
I think it's in the testimony. Is that also online, Calvin? It's online right now.
Yeah, I just have to see what, half of the 32, I guess you're referring to, yes?
Yes, at what point?
About a year from now.
Pretty much, yeah, it would be around, looks like, I mean, just roughly estimating it here, it looks like the fourth quarter of 2016, around then.
And this is a how long contract? 4 years?
It's a 4-year contract.
Okay, so we pay them half within a year or after a year.
Right, but we do have like hardware as well that's in there, and of course the actual software that's installed immediately.
Okay.
or
The reason
pretty
I asked that question is because, Maria, you were on the executive committee for FAST, right?
Yes.
Yes, and for FAST, you guys contracted cyber, and cyber was paid $6 million, never passed as certified from the federal government, we don't have a system. This was in 2008. It is 2015. We don't have a system. We are in court suing them. We paid them over $6 million out of an $8.1 million contract that was at some point increased to $10.1 million. You were on the executive committee. You approved those payments. We don't have a system today. So what's to say the same thing's not going to happen with this system?
Well, you know, the difference is, I mean, you know, as an executive, as a member of that committee, I wasn't involved in the daily, oversight of that.
But you agreed
project.
to make that payment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
we had-
authorized the payments
Yeah,
to
no,
cyber,
I agree.
even though they never passed the certification all along the way. In 2010, they couldn't pass the certification. 2000.
Well, I wasn't even here until, I didn't come until
Well, whenever you
2013.
came in,
Yeah.
they never passed. So you never looked back and said, this company never passed the certification. Why are we paying them? It's like a plumber coming to fix your toilet. Toilet doesn't work and you agree to pay them more than half before you have a working system? How does that work? So we will pay them over half in a year on a 4-year contract, and at the end of 4 years or a third year, somewhere down the line, we feel it's not working. Are they going to refund back us the money?
Well, the difference is it will work.
No, you know what?
Yeah.
President, what's his name? President Dobell said the same thing. He assured me there was not no in his vocabulary. He was going to raise the money, and he never did. So for you to tell me that at this point, I'm sorry.
No, I understand. I appreciate it, but the bottom line is that we're talking about a system that is commercial off the shelf. The FAST system was a totally different thing. It was an Oracle-based solution, I believe, that was highly customized, as I recall.
But it was
Okay.
in several states. Several states had employed FAST.
Okay.
Is that
I
correct?
don't really know much about it, except, as I said, we had maybe one meeting every 2 months. That was the extent of my participation. That's neither here nor there. The bottom line is that was not a commercial off-the-shelf system. This is, and that's the difference. I really, truly believe that. When you have something that starts to get customized, it's kind of like to me, it's an invitation for disaster.
Yes, but the people who agreed to the contract felt just as you do right now that the system was going to work, that it worked in other states, that cyber had done it. You had consultants. We had paid the consultants $5 million for an $8.1 million contract. I mean, we did all of that. We jumped through all the hoops, and today we're in the hole, $15 million for this system, of which we have none.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's awful. But, to be honest with you, I thought they were very close to getting certified towards the end, but then there were issues with, I know the contract or whatever, and, I didn't get involved in that, but it was the best I had seen as far as,
How can you be
progress.
close to being certified? You either certify or not certified. How
No,
do you
but
get close to-
they had somebody come in, and I guess there were some issues, but they kept coming in and looking and saying, you got this problem and that problem. And I think the last time they came in, it sounded like it was very much closer to getting certified. That was what was reported to us. I can only tell you what was told to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other issue, I know it was said that we can terminate for convenience, but we had the same thing with Gardner. We terminated Gardner 2 weeks into the contract, and they still charged us $46,000 out of a $250,000 contract. So, this thing for terminate for convenience, paying them, that doesn't necessarily mean we get our money back.
No, I understand. I hear what you're saying.
I know hearing it is one thing, but how do we safeguard the taxpayers' monies? Because there's a track record in government, and you have been on the committee, part of this track record, agreeing to these payments, and so I have no confidence.
Well, as I say, we're very confident. We've done a lot of preparation for this project. It started out badly. It derailed once. We're back on track. We've made huge progress. Okay.
So why are there not penalties, or why are there not
Well, I think there are
systems in place that to assure that if the system is not working, that we will get our money back, or some kind of system like that? I would feel a lot more comfortable with that.
The fact that the vendor won't get paid, to me, is the penalty. I'm not an attorney. I don't.
But
really
they're
know.
not going to get paid the entire amount. See, that's the fallacy. If we come to year 4, we're going to have paid them, what, over 80%? And you're going to tell me they're not going to get paid?
Right, but if we're into year 4, then presumably we've already implemented all of these taxes through rollout 4. I mean, I think
Okay, well, Gardner was into year what? Year 6?
Well, Gardner was a consultant.
I'm not Gardner, but Cyber was into year 6. We got no system. We paid them 80%, which you agreed to.
Senator, with all due respect, okay, I was part of the committee, admittedly, but, I came into it late, and I was, hearing
you
something,
folks
hearing,
authorized
I understand, but hearing an
payments.
update from somebody who's giving it to you, every 2 months is a little different from living and breathing this system and this program and this project every single day, which I'm doing. There's a big difference between the two.
So you're saying that we should not have confidence in any executive committees because
No.
they only hear things
That's-
secondhand?
no,
and they
I-
shouldn't be the ones to authorize
No.
payment?
I'm not saying that. I'm just,
You
you're
are
giving the
saying
two as a,
that.
comparison. And to be quite honest, I do believe that if they had continued on that path with cyber, they would have gotten it certified. But that's just my opinion.
So you're saying that had we paid $2 million
Has
more...
nothing to do with the payment. I'm just saying I saw
Well, let me
good
fin-
progress.
Can I finish?
Okay.
So you're saying because they had said if we had paid cyber $2 million more, then we may get a working system. And that's when DOT said, no, we're taking them to court. I mean, how much more do we have to put in for, attitude like this, had we waited longer, we would have had a working system. Well, I'm sorry, to me, that's ludicrous. 2008, we hired the consultants in 2006. 2008, this is 2015.
Well,
How much longer more would we have to wait to get a certified system?
All I can say is that at the ends of that road, it seemed like they were the best they had ever been as far as what I could see. Again, we're talking about a 1-hour meeting every 2 months. That does not make for for me to give a good judgment. That was my sense of things. The staff seemed invested in the project at that point, which was the first I had, it really seemed quite positive to me. Anyway, for whatever it's worth. Bottom line is, on this project, TSM, we are involved every single day. I'm constantly working with Program Manager Sue and with the other staff members. It's the best I can say is that we're very I'm managing this very carefully.
Okay, well, based on your responses to me about FAST, I'm even less confident on this
Well,
system.
as an accountant, I was just giving you what I saw, what my view was, what my feeling was on where I saw it looked like we were. Just my opinion, that's all.
That scares me.
Okay,
You're having
well.
the responsibility of being on the executive committee and having that kind of opinion, and yet the system never worked.
No, it didn't, you're right, yeah.
Can we ask for something more from the contract? More guarantees?
If you wanna kind of take a look and then see if
If I get
there's
a copy
other-
of that and the
Yes.
payment schedule? Because why would we pay more than half or before even halfway through the system?
So we can ask them for additional info.
Thank you.
Okay. Representative DeCloyd.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, a lot of information's been thrown out and a lot of problems that we see happening. There's many concerns that I agree with. My biggest thing I would like to see is I want to see on Plan B and on Plan C. You're talking millions of taxpayers' dollars of failed systems before us. I'm not confident at all with what's going on. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We answer to the people. And if we're going to put this kind of money out there, I would like to see what is the contingency plan and what are you going to do about what's happening in the transition period. We heard a lot about the employees that are there that are going to be used to transition the system over. I wasn't privy to do the excursion that they had 3 years ago. Just looking at the system, we know a lot of people that will continue to mail in their paperwork. We own a business. We know the struggles that we're faced with. Stuff are thrown to the side. Quick on asking for the tax, but really slow on giving back of the reimbursements or returns. I hear you say, I'm confident. I'm confident it has to work. A lot of us have said that in the plans we've put forward before our businesses, and most times it doesn't work. So my request is I'd like to see the Plan B. Make me confident. Make me feel like this program is going to work. Track records are made to be broken. put it in a contract, put it in writing for us all to see. I don't like the hope and prayer of trust me. I trust you in paperwork, I trust you in contracts, and let's do it the right way. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we wanted to thank the director and Mr. Harrison and the members of DOTAX, Mr. Su, for being here. And we're going to continue to have discussions on this issue. It's an important investment on behalf of the state. So we wish you a lot of success, and we all wish that it be successful as well. So with that, the joint committee is adjourned.
Thank you.